It's 7:30. If you could all please stand.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible.
Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to call this order of the Borough of Sayreville Planning Board meeting of April 16th, 2025. Beth, has this meeting been advertised in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act?
Yes, Chairman, it has.
All right, do we have any memorializations of the resolutions?
We need to do a roll call. Mr. Kandel, Ms. Larman, Mr. Mueller,
Here.
Mr. Shaw,
Here.
Ms. Sataka. Here. Mr. Velosan,
Here.
Mr. Williams, Councilman Zabrowski.
Here.
Chairman Ty.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Memorialization of resolutions, we don't have any.
We have one this evening, Main Street 1 LLC and Main Street 2 LLC, approval time extension for Main Street Sayreville, Block 249, Lot 1, Block 250, Lot 1, Block 251, Lot 1. May I get a motion?
We need a motion on that.
Make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Anybody opposed?
We'll do a roll call. Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Ms. Sataka, Mr. Velosan,
Yes.
Councilman Zabrowski,
Yes.
Chairman Ty.
Yes.
Thank you.
Acceptance of the minutes of the last month meeting.
No, there's no minutes this meeting.
Communication agenda.
None this evening.
All right, site plan and subdivision hearing.
This evening, we have Masjid Sadar Community Center, House of Worship preliminary and final major site plan 212 to 216 Ernston Road, Sayreville, block 444.04, lots 23, 24, 25, and 28.
Mr. Sachs, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members of the board. Lawrence Sachs on behalf of the applicant, Masjid Sadar Community Center. We were last here 6 months ago. We were here in October of 2024. And after that meeting, we decided that we needed to make a number of revisions to this plan, which we have accomplished, and we're going to go through them this evening. But I believe it was from some of the input from this board, members of the board, and from the members of the public that resulted in these revisions coming to fruition. So, Mr. Chairman, what I'd like to do is just briefly talk about the specific revisions that were made, and also certain conditions that the applicant is willing to have incorporated into any resolution if this board acts favorably on this application. But let me talk about the first one. The first and major revision that we made was that, if the board will recall, the original occupancy of this building for prayer purposes was 455 worshipers, 454 worshipers. We reduced it by approximately 30%, and now we have an occupancy of 321 in the gents prayer hall and the ladies prayer hall total. So a total of 321. And how we accomplished that was by obviously reducing the occupancy, but also providing a plan, which you have, which shows that specific prayer mats will be placed in a specific location. There will be aisles, all right, which really makes the most sense, because as this board is aware, and as everyone is pretty much aware, there are no seats in this particular facility. Mosques do not have seats, they have prayer mats. So we've delineated the 321 prayer mats, which will occupy the gents hall and the ladies hall in total. As a result, we also eliminated the stacked parking system in the garage. And how we were able to do that is that, based upon the reduction in occupancy, we determined that we no longer needed that stacked parking system. So we do not have a stacked parking system. There will be no valet parking. Your ordinance requires us to have 107 parking spaces to accommodate those 321 prayer mats, and that's what we're providing. So based on that, we decided that we did not need that stacked parking system. which was somewhat problematic, I believe, in theory and in terms of clearing out the building. We also were able to secure additional off-site parking for 22 parking spaces within walking distance of this facility. So those additional 22 parking spaces are available for us. We agreed to restrict all activities on site when prayer services are occurring. So, for instance, there'll be no utilization of the basketball court. There'll be no utilization of the exercise room. The classrooms will not be used. So all of the other ancillary uses to this house of worship will not occur while prayer services are going on. We've also agreed to have police monitoring of this site on Friday afternoons. We have 2 services on Friday. The Sayreville police will be directing traffic and monitoring traffic on all Friday afternoon events. Also during any special events where the need requires there to be police, and also during Ramadan. One of the requests of the board back in one of the earlier meetings was to provide specific square footage as to each room in the facility. We've done that. You have revised architectural plans that delineate that. We also provided you with a chart which shows the occupancy during various times of the day, every day of the week, all 7 days of the week. We also provided an operations manual. All right, we call it a day in the life of a masjid. We will agree that all of the references in that operations manual can be incorporated into a resolution of approval if the board acts favorably on this application. And finally, we have also provided a calendar. What we decided was that it was best to provide a quarterly calendar showing what time the prayers are during the middle of the first quarter of the year, the middle of the second quarter of the year, the middle of the third quarter of the year, and the middle of the fourth quarter of the year. And that will demonstrate what the approximate start times of these 5 prayer services will occur during those particular times. So we have it for February 15th, we have it for May 15th, we have it for August 15th, and we have it for November 15th. So I think that provides a very accurate depiction of when these prayer services will commence and when they will end. So I think with that said, Mr. Chairman, I've covered all of the revisions to the plans. What I would like to do is briefly go through the day in the life operations manual, which I assisted in the preparation of, and just give some of the highlights of that, just so the board and the public are aware. So let's first talk about the activities for the prayer services, which will occur February 15th in terms of timing. All right, so there are 5 prayer services. The first one being the dawn prayer, the second one being the midday prayer, the third being the afternoon prayer, the fourth being the sunset prayer, and the fifth being the nighttime prayer. So let me give you the times for the prayers on February 15th as an example. The dawn prayer will start at 6:15 a.m. and will end at 6:30 p.m. The midday prayer will begin at 1:30 p.m. and will end at 1:45 p.m. The afternoon prayer will begin at 4:15 p.m. and will end at 4:30 p.m. The sunset prayer will begin at 5:40 p.m. and will end at 5:55 p.m. And the nighttime prayer will begin at 8 o'clock and will end at 8:15 p.m. As you'll notice, the blocks are 15-minute blocks. That's how long these prayer services will take. May 15th, which would be the middle of the second quarter, let me give you the times for that. The dawn prayer would begin at 5 a.m. and end at 5:15 p.m. The midday prayer would begin at 1:30 p.m. and end at 1:45 p.m. The afternoon prayer would begin at 6:15 p.m. and end at 6:30 p.m. The sunset prayer would begin at 8:17 p.m. and end at 8:32 p.m. And the nighttime prayer would begin at 10 p.m. and end at 10:15 p.m. I'll now give you the third quarter, which would be August 15th. And as you can see, a lot of these times are, not a lot of them, the early prayer and the late prayer, the sunset prayer, are really based on the sunset and sunrise. All right, so for August 15th, the dawn prayer would begin at 5:30 a.m. and end at 5:45 a.m. The midday prayer, 1:30 p.m. and to 1:45 p.m. The afternoon prayer from 1:15 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. The sunset prayer, 8:05 p.m. to 8:55 p.m. to 9:15 p.m. And the nighttime prayer, 9:30 p.m. to 9:45 p.m. And then finally, for the November 15th calendar, the dawn prayer would begin at 6 a.m. and end at 6:15 a.m. The midday prayer, 1:30 to 1:45 p.m. The afternoon prayer, 3:15 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. The sunset prayer from 6:08 p.m. to 6:23 p.m. and the nighttime prayer from 8 p.m. to 8:15 p.m. Now, we also provided in that operations manual what we believe the average attendance would be at the various prayers, and let me give you those numbers. So for the dawn prayer, we anticipate 35 attendees. For the midday prayer, 20 attendees. By the way, the midday prayer that I've been referring to does not include the Friday afternoon prayer, but it would just be every other day of the week. The afternoon prayer, 20 attendees. The sunset prayer, 35 attendees. And the nighttime prayer, 45 attendees. All right, so those are the various calendar events that I think were necessary to be provided to this board so that you could have a flavor of when activities would occur. All right, now, as part of our operations manual, we also provided information about the Friday prayers. There are two of them. We anticipate that the first service, which is usually the most well-attended Friday prayer, would have a total of 190 attendees, and that would include both men and women. And by the way, for the prayers that I just indicated, that would also include men and women in terms of the total. And for the second service, it would be 80 attendees. So obviously the first service is the more well-attended. The second service would be the lesser attended. There is going to be sufficient time between the two prayers for us to clear the parking lot. It's going to be approximately 45 minutes. That was an issue with the stacked parking system with the valet. There was a big concern about how quickly would people be able to leave. But without having the stacked system, the vehicles in the garage will be able to obviously exit. There'll be police assistance there to make sure that that's done in an efficient and expeditious manner. And we anticipate no issues whatsoever with the parking lot clearing on the Friday prayer after the first service. All right, let me talk about some of the other issues that are contained in this operations manual. Information was requested about the use of the multi-purpose hall. And you'll notice in the operations manual that the multi-purpose hall will only be used for life cycle events. And life cycle events are really generic to any religion. Those life cycle events would be the celebration of a birth, a wedding, and a funeral. Those will only occur on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. They will not occur during the week. Obviously, they would also occur in the afternoon and early evening, so as not to conflict with any other traffic times that we'd be concerned with. We're sympathetic to the fact that schools empty out at a certain hour, so we can accommodate that in terms of scheduling. Information was also, and by the way, in terms of the number of attendees that would be at a multi-purpose hall function, we anticipate that it would be probably no more than 80. Probably less than that, but we wanted to be on the comfortable side to give you that information. We also spoke about the basketball court in the operations manual. That will be limited to sporting activities. And as I stated in the beginning, the basketball court will only be used during non-prayer times. And we have specific hours for that. It would be Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., Saturday from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m., and then again from 5 p.m. to 9:30 p.m., and on Sundays from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., and from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. So we have limited hours with respect to the utilization of the basketball court. We also anticipate that no more than 30 attendees would be there at any given time. We also provided you information regarding the exercise areas. There are 2 exercise areas, one for the men's and one for the ladies. Again, those will also only be utilized during non-prayer times, and we also have specific hours for that. That would be Monday through Friday from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., Saturday from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m., and from 5 p.m. to 9:30 p.m., and on Sundays from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. and from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Basically the same hours as the basketball court. And again, we also anticipate that no more than 30 attendees would be utilizing those facilities. We also provided you information in the operations manual regarding the youth activity hall for both boys and girls. Again, those will also only be utilized during non-prayer times, and the usage of those rooms will be for arts and crafts activities and other youth activities. The utilization of those rooms will only occur on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And we haven't really specified the times on that, but we don't anticipate great usage of that. But again, it will be during non-prayer times, and we anticipate maybe 15 attendees in both the boys' activity hall and the girls' activity hall. We also have 7 classrooms. I think request at the last hearing was when are these classrooms going to be used? First of all, they'll only be used for educational activities for the youth and also for women's Quran classes. And again, they will only be utilized during non-prayer times, and that will be on Saturday and Sunday only from 10 a.m. to 12:40 p.m. And we anticipate no more than 10 children in each classroom and maybe 10 women when it's a women's Quran class. We have some other ancillary uses on this property. We have 2 offices. Office number 1, which is a management office. Again, the only time that it will be staffed is during non-prayer times. And office number 2, which is a supervisor's office as well, will also be during non-prayer times. We anticipate having 2 employees who will staff those offices. We also, in the operations manual, have a cafeteria. And again, that will only be used for dining preparation for special events. All right. I want it to be clear that for regular services, there is no food that is served. And that would include even the Friday afternoon services. All right. We also made reference in the operations manual as to the major holiday, which is Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha. Those are 2 separate holidays. All of those activities, and we've said this from the outset, all occur off-site at the borough school. So those are the major holidays, and none of the activities will occur on this site. They will all occur off-site. For Ramadan, and Ramadan does span a month. All right, it's usually 28 to 29 days. Ramadan is also in the evening, and we've indicated in the report that that will be generally from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. and that We will limit the occupancy in our facility to 321. If it turns out that we have overflow, we have the use of the Samsel Upper Elementary School, which they presently utilize now, and they would continue to utilize that in the future for parking. We anticipate that the attendance for Ramadan is similar to the attendance for Friday afternoon prayers. The difference on Ramadan, and I think it's been referenced in the operations manual, is that whereas on a Friday afternoon service, some people will come in their own individual car. Of course, we know that people will come multiple attendees in one car, but for Ramadan, it's usually a family that will be attending because it's in the evening and it doesn't conflict with work. And, that could be 4 occupants per car. But we're going to get into the traffic testimony and show how we support the parking. All right, and in terms of parking, we also indicated in our operations manual that based on the 321 prayer mats, where we need to provide 107 parking spaces. And how do we come to that? Well, for a house of worship, your requirement is 1 parking space for every 3 seats. We're utilizing the same ratio here with the prayer mats. So for 321 prayer mats, we need to divide that by 3. We come up with 107 parking spaces. For the basketball court and the exercise room, we need 4.5 parking spaces for every 1,000 square feet. And for all the other uses, we need 1 space for every 250 square feet. That would include the cafeteria, the multi-purpose room, and the classrooms. So, in summary, I think we have provided a fairly comprehensive operations manual to you. What we also did is we also provided a chart to you, which I believe is part of the submission and shows the occupancy. And I don't know if that's going to go up on the screen. If we can. Abraham, you see, okay. All right, well, if not, I know the board has it, but for members of the public, well, okay. It might be hard to read, so I'm gonna indicate what it is. All right. I know the board has it, but I want the members of the public to understand what the maximum utilization of this site would be. So for instance, on a Sunday, we know that the maximum occupancy of this building, utilizing the basketball court, the exercise area, the classrooms, and the youth activity rooms and the office, would trigger 95 parking spaces. All right, that's on a Sunday. And that would be in the morning. In the afternoon, that drops down to 76 parking spaces because we don't have the classrooms in use. Those are only going to be in the morning. And then again, on Monday, all right, we have very limited occupancy. The maximum occupancy on a Monday is roughly 45 parking spaces. And that would be during the times that the basketball court is open, which would be during non-prayer times. So the balance of Monday would only trigger between 23 and 13 parking spaces based upon the limited activities that occur on a Monday. So the primary activity that's going to occur on a Monday is going to be the utilization of the ancillary activities, the basketball court, the exercise areas, et cetera. On the Tuesday, we have the same numbers. Again, the maximum number of parking spaces would be for the utilization of the basketball court and the exercise facilities. And that again triggers a parking demand of around 45 parking spaces. Wednesday, same scenario. Thursday, same scenario. let's get to Friday because Friday is the critical day. All right, we have anticipated that based on the 321 prayer mats, we are required to have 107 parking spaces. We anticipate that we will be utilizing those 107 parking spaces. However, the difference is we're going to be utilizing them on two separate prayer services. So 190, if it's the first service, equates to roughly 63 parking spaces being utilized. And for the second service, if it's approximately 80, it would be 27 or so, all right? So again, we have 107 available parking spaces, but again, we don't anticipate that all of them will be used up during the first service, and we certainly don't anticipate that they will be all used up during the second service. In fact, we have an abundance of parking to cover the Friday afternoon prayer. We also anticipate that in the evening, on Friday evenings, with the basketball facility being used, and the exercise facilities being used, we could run into a situation where we would need 90 parking spaces. But again, we have 107 parking spaces. And then finally on Saturday, Saturday morning, we anticipate that with all of the uses in effect, the parking demand would be 95 parking spaces. And again, we have 107. All of those uses being the basketball court, the exercise facilities, the classrooms, because we will have students there on Saturday mornings. And again, in the evening, when all of the facilities are potentially being used, the basketball court and the exercise rooms and the classrooms, we also anticipate a demand of roughly 90 parking spaces. So I guess what this chart indicates to you, or should indicate to you, is that there are peaks and valleys in the use. The peak is obviously on Friday afternoon when we have the two prayer services, but again, based upon the parking that's being provided and the two prayer services, we don't ever anticipate that there will be a parking issue on Friday afternoons. And also, we have the use of an additional 22 parking spaces off-site if we need them. So let me just see if I've covered everything, Mr. Chairman. I think I have. The only thing I'd like to supplement is I want to insert a new page 6 because the page 6 that you have.
Where do you want to insert this?
This would be under special events. Under the under Ramadan. Yeah, it would be in the day in the life, Mr. Chairman. So page 6 in the day of the life.
Are you going to put somebody up to speak about this? Or?
No, I think I've referenced it. I think I just wanted to reference the fact that the Sam Sell Elementary School will be utilized for overflow parking. That's all I wanted to do. So I have just an amendment to page 6.
Okay.
Mr. Sachs, I may just recommend that the applicant introduce both the parking, the occupancy spreadsheet, as well as the calendar document and the detailed report on room space and usage as specific exhibits.
That's fine. We can do that.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the exhibit number is. Beth may have that for me. What's our last one, if you know?
I think that would be our.
I agree.
Exhibit 7.
All right, so A7, Mr. Pullman, if you want, we'll use the day in the life as A7. And then I think we can use the detailed report on room and space usage as A8. We can reference the chart that I just gave the highlights to as A9. And Supplemental page 6 can be A10. And I have an extra copy of that, which I can provide to your secretary. Mr. Chairman, with that said, certainly we could answer any questions as to what we've just indicated are the revisions and what's contained in those in the operations manual. I also have my traffic engineer here again this evening, Mr. Stimmel. Okay, that's fine.
Does anybody from the board have any questions of the Mr. Sachs on the information we just went over?
Mr. Chairman, just one question. Mr. Sachs, you referenced an off-site location for 22 additional spaces. Can you elaborate on that?
3 Johnson Place, Councilman.
Is that the former hot dog stand or hot dog location?
Yes.
Mr. Dees? That's currently on, I don't believe that that's occupied right now. If it was, would that alter your plans?
No, we have a lease with them, so they'll have to make whatever provisions are necessary.
Thank you.
So it's your testimony that you have 3 Johnson Place and the Slover School.
Yes, and really the school is only for Ramadan and for Eid, but we certainly have the use of 3 Johnson Place if we needed it at any other time. Again, I don't anticipate that we'll ever need it based upon the limitation on occupancy.
How far of a walk from 3 Johnson Place to the mosque?
About a half a block? Yeah.
More than that.
Johnson Lane, I'm sorry. It might be more, it's more than a half a block, but it's a few blocks.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Want to bring up your traffic?
Thank you. Okay. Have a seat. Mr. Chairman, actually, before you swear in Mr. Stimmel, Mr. Fisher, I just want to make sure, I meant to say it at the beginning. We provided you with the affidavit of service and the notices and everything, I assume is in order for jurisdiction. Thank you.
Please raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
All right, you are under oath.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I know Mr. Stimmel has testified before. I believe his qualifications have not changed. Mr. Stimmel, your license is still in good standing. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank
Motion
you.
to accept his credentials. All in favor? Aye.
Mr. Stimmel, since we were last here in October, I know that you undertook some additional traffic studies. You've also had the opportunity to receive the report from Mr. Fishinger dated April 11th, 2025. So if you could give the board the benefit of your testimony as to the traffic study.
Sure. Since the last time we were in front of the board, and find it hard to believe it was 6 months ago, but I'm sure Mr. Sachs is right. We submitted 2 documents. The first was February 19th, 2025. And it was basically a summary of 2 different sets of traffic counts that were performed at the Madison Park Volunteer Fire Company. That's where the mosque community is currently holding their Friday prayer services. The first was done on Friday, May 17th, 2024. It had previously been submitted to the board and previously testified to. That was Friday, May 17th from 12 p.m. until 4 p.m. So it captured both the early and the late prayer service on a Friday afternoon at the fire company. The results of those counts showed a total of 270 persons entering the site and 195 vehicles over the 4-hour period. So again, that's both services. That equals a vehicle occupancy rate of 1.38 persons per vehicle. We did an updated count at the fire company on Friday, January 17th of this year, again from 12 until 4 p.m. Results of the count showed a total of 263 persons entering the site. So pretty consistent with the counts from May of 24, which was 270. It dropped slightly to 263. But the 263 persons arrived at the site in 159 vehicles over the 4-hour period, which is a vehicle occupancy rate of 1.65 persons per vehicle. I provided some additional information regarding the operation at the fire company as it currently exists. I don't know how relevant that is to the board's consideration, but it has been submitted into the record. The second document that was provided was from April 1st of 2025. So just about 2 weeks ago, we did an updated capacity analysis at the locations of the proposed site driveways using similar methods as to the October 2nd, 2024 traffic study, which was submitted. In the updated analysis, the site volumes were based on the weekly parking table. I think Mr. Sachs called it the parking occupancy spreadsheet, which was provided by Vision Design and was just testified to. And we used the May of 2024 automatic traffic recorder data taken across the site frontage on Ernston Road as the basis for the existing traffic volumes. So using those projections and that traffic data, we looked at driveway operations at 4 different times of day or days of week. The first was the weekday morning. Mr. Fishinger had recommended we look at the weekday morning commuter period, which is 7 to 9 a.m. As Mr. Sachs testified to, the morning prayers would start at 5, start between 5 and 6:30 in the morning, depending on the time of year, and would be concluded by 7 a.m. So it's actually a little bit before the weekday peak period for commuter traffic. So for the morning analysis, we looked at the traffic volumes from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. using the occupancy for the morning prayer service, which would be 23 vehicles in, 23 vehicles out. Results of the analysis showed that movements at the site driveway operate at level of service B or better, and that is largely because of the lower volume at that early time of morning. The second period we looked at was the typical weekday evening from 5 to 6 p.m. So the weekday evening peak period for street traffic generally falls between 4 and 6 p.m. Depending on the time of year, the afternoon prayers or the sunset prayers could fall within that window. The sunset prayers are anticipated to be more heavily attended, so that's what we used as the basis for this analysis, with 23 vehicles entering and 23 vehicles exiting, and then assume that all vehicles arriving for the subsequent weeknight activities, 54 vehicles would enter during that window as well. The results of that analysis show that the site driveways operate at level of service D or better during the weekday evening peak period. We gave a new consideration using a slightly different approach with the Friday midday period, which was from 1 to 2 p.m. As has been testified to extensively, we expect that the Friday afternoon prayer services would be the busiest typical weekly event at the mosque. We expect, based on that parking table, to have 107 vehicles enter, 107 vehicles exit the site during that peak hour. So we analyzed that as the driveway is proposed, an unsignalized driveway, and came up with level of service D or better for driveway movements. At Mr. Fishinger's recommendation, we looked at the analysis as if there was a traffic signal present to represent the presence of a police traffic director at that location. Not surprisingly, the levels of service became slightly better at that location. It improved from level of service D to level of service C or better for the Friday midday period. And then finally, the Saturday morning peak period was taken to be 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. The schedule of activity shows a parking occupancy of 106 vehicles during the Saturday morning period. It is likely or expected that there will be a turnover of some of these vehicles throughout the morning, while the background traffic volumes along Ernston Road increase throughout the morning period. So we studied the period from 11 a.m. to 12 noon, assuming half of the vehicles out of that 106 would turn over in a given hour, 53 in, 53 out, and found level of service D at the proposed site driveways. Moving to Mr. Fishinger's April 11th, 2025 review letter. And I'm going to skip over the comments that have already been addressed. The first comment, starting on page 2, asked for testimony regarding the results of the revised analysis, which was just provided to the board. Comment 2 talks about the provision of police traffic control, which Mr. Sachs clarified, I believe, the times that the police traffic control would be present on the site. Comment number 3, comment number 4, and comment number 5 were previously addressed. Comment number 6 talks about the 107 parking space demand as well as contingency plans should the demand exceed the supply on site. Again, I believe Mr. Sachs provided some information on that. 107 parking spaces is the calculation based on the ordinance requirement. Also talked about the provision of 22 off-site parking spaces. Comment number 7 at the top of page 5 talks about the vehicle occupancy of 3 persons per vehicle. That table that was submitted is just a projection of the full occupancy of the parking component assigned to each aspect of the use. So if the calculation based on the ordinance is 107 parking spaces for the prayer hall, the table assumes that when the primary services are occurring, that the 107 parking spaces are occupied. The ordinance doesn't say the parking demand should be calculated based on the occupied seats or based on the number of persons attending. If you did that, you might come up with a slightly different number, but it's 2 different things, really. It's the parking per seats or the parking per attendees. And that's the difference between the 2 sets of numbers. Comment number 8 was previously addressed. Comment number 9 was addressed earlier this evening. Comment number 10 was addressed earlier this evening. Comment number 11 was previously addressed, as was 12. Comment number 13 goes back to the police traffic directors, which we just spoke about. 14 and 15 were previously addressed. And then it moves on to the parking comments at the bottom of page 7. The first parking comment relates to the stackers and the valet operation, which have of course been eliminated from the plan. Comment number 2, operational testimony was just provided. Comment number 3 was previously addressed. Comment number 4 is about the turnover between the services. And we would expect that with an hour gap between the start of the 2 primary services on Friday, it would take about 20 minutes, 25 minutes to unload all the vehicles from the site based on the operation of the site previously. We had done counts when this project started, when the mosque was in operation at 216 Ernston Road, and anticipate that it would take about the same amount of time to clear. People, from my observation at the fire hall, obviously it's a different location, but people aren't there to linger after the prayer services. They're there to pray and get back to their daily routine. Comment number 5, testimony was provided about the parking lot function. Comment number 6, I believe we had previously spoken about the tandem parking spaces, but the inner tandem spaces would be assigned to the mosque staff, and the stacked parking lifts have been eliminated from the plan. Comment number 7 and 8 relate to vehicle maneuvering.
Yeah. We can have our engineer, when we go over Mr. Cornell's report, I believe a lot of this is subsumed in there as well. So we'll cover that when we go over his report.
All right, so I won't hit those points right now. Comment number 9 relating to the likelihood of school buses or charter buses on the site. We do not expect to have any on the property. Comment number 10
That'll-
relates to vehicle circulation.
Yeah.
Comment 11 does as
Well,
well.
number 10 will be provided. We'll provide those turning paths.
Really, I think the remaining comments are probably all for the site engineer. Comment number 14 has been previously addressed. So I think those are all the comments from Mr. Fishinger's letter that come under my heading.
Mr. Stimmel, just one question. We've eliminated the stacked parking system because we've limited the occupancy of this building, so we don't need the additional parking. But in your professional opinion, is there going to be sufficient time between the two Friday services for that lot to be fully cleared out?
Yes.
Okay. And we've agreed that those inner spaces, inner tandem spaces will be limited to staff. There's a comment about additional signage perhaps. Is there additional signage that we could put up on site to reinforce the concept that there'll be no left turns out of this site?
We can put additional signage at the location of the driveway, additional striping and signage across Ernston Road. I think there was also a comment about additional signage related to pedestrian crossings, which we could certainly add as well. Obviously, anything in the public right of way would be subject to county approval.
Okay, and certainly on Friday afternoons, we've agreed as a condition that the police will be directing and monitoring traffic in and out of this site. All right, so in terms of left turns, that would be a control that the police would have as well.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I don't have any further questions of Mr. Stimmel. Hopefully he's covered most of Mr. Fishinger's concerns. I do have my engineer who can cover some of the internal site plan issues. There's just a few of them, but certainly he's available for any questioning by the board.
Anybody have any questions of the traffic engineer?
I just have one or two,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman. So good evening, Joe Fishinger with Brightview Engineering. Bill, I know we've been back and forth a number of times on the technical analysis, and for the board's benefit, through that iterative process, they've addressed a lot of my technical comments. Just want some clarification on the occupancies you observed at the firehouse versus the 3 people or 3 prayer mats per vehicle. If I understand, one's sort of an ordinance requirement and one is real world. So using the real world numbers, using the numbers you observed at the firehouse, how many people do you expect to be in the facility on a Friday service? How do you justify the comparison of the two?
Yeah, the numbers we've counted at the facility have been fairly consistent from the prior counts to the updated counts. We expect that there's going to be something along the lines of 270 persons at the site between the two services on a Friday. So, you know, if you take the split it in two, you've got 135 persons at each of the services, and with the car sharing and, you know, with the provision of the offsite parking as needed, we don't anticipate that there's going to be a problem with the parking supply at the facility.
Sorry, Mr. Sachs had said earlier that of the two services, the first would be much more widely attended. Do you expect with two services, if the first one's too busy, will people move to the second? Are they?
I do. There is a convenience-based aspect to this. You know, you don't necessarily, if you've got 270 people at the mosque on a given day, it's not going to necessarily be the same 270 people the next week. If you work at an office nearby, that's your obvious location. If you live nearby and you happen to be home, that's where you're going to go. If you're a person who's moving about during the course of a day, you'll go to the most convenient location. But I think you're going to develop a pattern, and we had talked about this before, where you know, if this is convenient for you, you're going to go there, and part of that is the parking. And we don't expect this to happen. If there's a problem where people can't park conveniently at the site and get in and out of it in a time frame that works with them, it's going to self-regulate. They'll either come back for the later service, they'll find another mosque, they'll find a way to share a ride, similar as you would at any large function at a public building. There's a lot of parking here, for instance, but because of the demand for these meetings, people may have had to take the opportunity to get a ride with a friend or a neighbor, and it would be no different there.
And then my last question, and this may be handled by another witness. There were a lot of restrictions on when various spaces within the building would and wouldn't be used. How is that policed? How is that enforced? Is there any method for the town to be able to know whether or not those spaces are being used at certain times?
Yeah, Mr. Fessinger, maybe I can respond to that one. I think it's fairly common knowledge in this religion and in any mosque that when prayer services are occurring, the other uses do not occur. And I don't think that's any different from any other religion, quite frankly. If there's Sunday services at a church or Saturday morning services at a synagogue, the other rooms are not being utilized. So it's more or less ingrained into the concept of this particular religion or any religion. But we certainly will make that a condition of approval. I don't expect that a zoning officer is going to come down necessarily and accurately determine that, but it's certainly in the best interests of the house of worship to make sure that there's certainly enough parking here and just overall respect for the tenets of the religion, that when prayer services are occurring, nothing else should be occurring. So
Those were all my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Very much. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead. Andy.
question. How many parking places are in the parking garage?
How many are in the underground portion?
give us a second.
I didn't bring my plan up. Hold on one second. $64 underground.
Okay, assuming that 64 cars show up at one time, how long is it going to take to park each one of those cars without stacking them up and presenting a backup out onto the road?
The parking lifts have been eliminated and the valet parking operation has going to be eliminated. So it's going to be self-parked, but I believe the applicant does still intend to have people in the parking lot to assist and say there's parking over here, there's parking over here.
Okay, so if you pull in your car, you drive in, you're only going down the ramp about 5 miles an hour. To park the car, it's going to take at least a minute from the time you enter to the time you park your car. Now, if you stack up 64 cars, how long is that going to take for all of those cars to park satisfactorily?
Well, they're all going to be processing simultaneously. It's not going to be a queue of 64 cars at the parking garage. And not everyone is going to arrive simultaneously. So
well, assuming that you do, you have an influx, you have a growth in your congregation.
that it never happens that way. I've been doing traffic studies for 25 years and people always propose these scenarios. If you have 20 apartments and 2 cars in each apartment, what if all 40 cars try to get out at the same time? And if you think about the street you live on, look at your neighbors to the left and to the right of you and across the street. How often do all the cars in all the houses try to pull out at the same time? It just doesn't work that way. There's going to be a staggered arrival as there is at the fire hall right now. And there's going to be a staggered departure. People get up, leave from different parts of the building. They find their shoes, they make their way to their car, they say hi to their friend. It's not all 107 or 64 in the basement coming and going at exactly the same time.
Well, I'm assuming as your service at Ramadan, you're going to have that influx at that time.
The service at Ramadan, the testimony was that the attendance is expected to be about the same as it is at the Friday prayer service, but a greater concentration of people in the vehicles, a higher occupancy per vehicle because it's after work, so people are going to go there as a family. So and I didn't specifically analyze this, but it sounds like they're expecting same number of people, fewer vehicles.
Mr. Stimmel, is your client seeking a variance for parking?
Well, I'm gonna answer that, okay? We have agreed to, and I think Mr. McDonough may have alluded to it at the last hearing when he gave his planning testimony, but we have agreed that the uses will not be occurring at the same time, because if you were to add up all the uses, we would need 250 parking spaces based upon the calculation by Mr. Cornell and your staff. However, the basketball facility is not going to be utilized when the prayers are being utilized, and vice versa. Same thing with the multipurpose room, same thing with the classrooms, the exercise rooms. So I would argue that we're really not seeking a variance, because if you take, and Mr. Stimmel can probably back me up on this, but if you're going to take the highest occupancy load, which would be for the Friday afternoon services, based upon the ordinance, we're required to have 107 parking spaces, and that's what we've provided. So I think if we were not going to limit the other activities from occurring during, in other words, occurring at the same time, if we were to say, well, yeah, sure, on a Friday afternoon, while the prayer services are going on, somebody can play basketball, then I guess I think we would require a variance. But I think if you look specifically at the highest load, we have enough parking. And I'll let Mr. Stimmel respond to that as well.
I don't know that I have too much to add to it. As to whether or not a variance is required, I think that's ultimately going to be the board that makes that determination. My focus is more on whether or not the parking is adequate, and in my review, I believe that it is.
Mr. Chair, it seems that whether a variance is required is a legal question. I'm not sure I understand.
And
I
I'm
know
just
the
asking
answer.
our lawyer where he stands.
That reading the ordinance, if you take it literally, you don't require a variance, but just for belt and suspenders, I would recommend that you request one.
I'll be guided by your legal counsel. But again, I think we provided the proofs, to justify that. That's ultimately up to the board. But
Well, I just want to be clear, is Mr. Stimmel testifying regarding the positive and negative criteria that you need to get a variance?
no, no, he's not, because he's only providing traffic testimony. I believe Mr. McDonough covered that at the last hearing. If we feel we need him to come back, he's not here this evening, but we certainly can have him come back and address that.
Anybody else have any questions?
Yes, Chairman, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So out of 107 parking spaces, how many are for disabled?
How many are ADA accessible?
ADA accessible.
Wearing my contacts was a mistake. There's 1, 2, 3 in the basement. And I believe two in the surface. Whatever the provision is, I know that it complies with the ADA, because the
Right.
comment, I believe, was in CME's review.
My only concern is if you are going 100%, like 107 needed, 107 you have, and you have this ADA compliant, the expectation is you would have that many ADA people. And if there are none, then you're short, right? If all the healthy individuals show up.
The ADA parking spaces are counted towards the
107,
total.
that's
I
what I
understand what you're saying.
Yeah, if you had 112 and you require 107, then yeah, I would feel much more comfortable doing that.
I understand what you're saying. There is no perfect answer to that. What I suspect would happen is that you have some people in the community that would need the spaces. You have some people in the community that maybe don't have the tag, but do have a difficulty getting around, that could also use them, even if it wasn't 5 members of the community at each service that had the required tag.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Go ahead.
So on the 1 hour intervals for all the prayer services that you've listed, is that the duration that the people come in to pray during for the whole hour, or they only come in for a few minutes, or?
The service is pretty short. I observed it at the fire hall where they're currently having a service. It's maybe 10 or 15 minutes of what I would call a sermon or a homily, and then 5 minutes of prayers at the end. So the whole thing is 20 minutes.
Okay, because we were talking about everyone coming in to park their cars around the same time. So usually everyone comes for a service at the same time, leaves at the same time. But in this case, you're saying people will come between that hour and they'll come in for 15, 20 minutes, leave, and then more people will come for 15, 20 minutes and leave. Is that the way it works?
It's two different services, one early start time, one late start time. The start times are offset by an hour, so there's more than enough time to clear out the lots between the two services if you've got 40 minutes where there's no service occurring.
Right, but I'm talking about within, so the morning service is from 6 a.m. to 7, right?
It varies
When
at
would
the time of the
people-
year, but the morning service
It's
is much
15
smaller.
minutes. It's only 15 minutes, the morning service.
Okay,
In fact, all of the services are really only 15 minutes. I think.
so that would make the people come together even more so, right? They'd be all coming at the same time for 15 minutes.
Well, the services, I think I've indicated in the operations manual, you get about 35 people maximum at one of either the early morning service or the nighttime service. And, we anticipate that no more than 270 people will be attending two different services. Now, understand something, we will have the police there who will be monitoring this traffic, and one of their instructions will be to clear the lot. So there will, and there will not be, and again, I think Mr. Stimmel has testified to it. After the service is over, people don't dilly-dally. They got to get back to work, they got to get back to school, whatever, got to get back home. I think, Mr. Stimmel, you're comfortable with the analysis that you've done at the firehouse to determine that lot cleared out fairly quickly with, and by the way, there's police assistance there as well on Fridays. And do you anticipate any problem at the subject site?
I did observe the operation at the fire hall. I don't believe there's police traffic directors there, or at least there were not the day I was there, because there is a little bit lower volume of traffic on the frontage road. But the operation of the people, let's say, is going to be the same as at this site at 216 Ernston Road. The people are there, they pray, they leave relatively quickly. It is throttled somewhat because of the fact that you stream out of the building, you're getting yourself together, et cetera. You get back to your cars are in different parts of the property. But I think that part of it would be the same as at Ernston Road. I think, as Mr. Sachs said, I don't anticipate a problem with the vehicles exiting the property. I looked at the video when the site was operating at this location previously, and it was pretty quick. People got out of that site fairly quickly without the traffic directors when I observed it.
Have any questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
Mr. Sachs, just to clarify, because I know it took a long time to get to a specific number, but it's my understanding that based on the borough ordinance standards, the proposed uses for the building, we've agreed on 250, that the standard is 250 parking spaces. You're proposing 107.
Yes, with the caveat, however.
No, I understand
Yeah,
the caveat.
yeah.
I just wanted to make sure
Yes.
that those two numbers are set.
Yeah, and just so the record is clear, so the 250 would be every single use occurring at the same particular time, which we have agreed not to be the case. So that's why I agree with your legal counsel. From a purely analytical approach, you would take the greatest demand for parking, that being the Friday afternoon prayer service, 107. But yes, if I would just look at all of the uses taken together, Councilman, it would be 250. But again, we have agreed that that will not be something that will occur.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs.
When we say it's not going to occur, is this going to be put into an ordinance so that your operating manual is the law and if you have to follow it?
Your resolution is the law.
Okay.
So if the board acts favorably, you're going to put a condition in the resolution that that no other activities will occur when
When
prayer
services
services
are
are occurring.
And violation of that would constitute a action that could be enforced by code enforcement.
That's correct.
Anybody else have any other questions? Mr. Sachs, you have anything else?
Mr. Chairman, if you'd like, I can go through the report of
CME?
CME. I
I'd
can
like
bring up
that.
Mr. Khan because I think he can address some of the comments that are in there. If that's all right. I think we have addressed Mr. Fissinger's report, and I can also go over the planner's report as well.
Chairman, before, I need to change the exhibit numbers. So we need to amend the record. For the day in the life, it's going to be A10. The chart will be A11 and page 6 will be A12.
How to do that, huh?
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You're under oath.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Beth. We need to clarify that again.
For clarification, the exhibits will be A10 will be a day in the life. A11 will be the chart and A12 will be the new page 6.
Beth, what were we gonna designate the detailed report on room and space usage? That was a separate document.
Was that the chart?
No, the chart was I'm gonna call it a spreadsheet, but that's probably an inappropriate term. It's more of a document that looks like an Excel spreadsheet.
Then we can make that A13.
Yeah, because I believe, Mr. Sachs, correct me if I'm wrong, but your order of it was the day in a life, and then you had the detailed report on room and space usage.
Okay, then that would be A11.
Okay. And then 12 will be, I think, what we call the chart, which is looks like a spreadsheet with some tables. And
Yes.
All right.
That'll be day 12, and then that page 6, the new page 6 will be A13 then.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Everybody clear? All right, you're sworn in. If we could just go over CMEs from summaries. One,
Mr. Chairman, can we proceed?
go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Khan, and I know Mr. Khan testified, he's testified at prior hearings, but he also gave some insight as to how the mosque operates at one of the earlier meetings. Mr. Khan, if you could give the board the benefit, because I want you to clarify the Friday afternoon prayer service in particular. You have designed a number of mosques in your career?
Correct.
How many?
I would say more than 15.
Okay. And you're familiar with how the prayer services operate?
Correct.
So perhaps you can give some clarification to the board as to how this parking lot will clear out, in your opinion.
Sure. I know there are some concerns from the board members about if all the cars are coming at the same time. I can talk about the Friday prayers. I practice the same religion, so I attend every Friday to my local mosque, as well as I have designed over 15 mosques throughout New Jersey, more than 15 mosques. The way the Friday prayers work is there's a sermon that starts at a given time, let's say 1 o'clock. It's a 15-minute sermon. Then there is a mandatory prayer service, which is about 5 minutes, as Mr. Stimmel testified. The way people, especially on Fridays, some people are coming from, actually most of the people are coming from work. So they have a very limited time during lunch break to come in and out and do the whatever is the bare minimum obligatory practice. So what they do is most of the people you will see, like there are some people that will come before the start of the sermon. There are people who are coming throughout the sermon while the sermon is being held. People are still walking in or driving into the facility. And there are people who are just there just to attend the obligatory prayer, which is a 5-minute slot. And they are the ones who are usually stuck finding a parking space if the mosque is already filled. But as far as the leaving, it's the same process. Some people, after obligatory prayers, you have to do some voluntary prayers, I would call them. So some people stay for those voluntary prayers, which will take another 5-10 minutes. Some people who are rushing to go back to work, as soon as the obligatory prayer, 5-minute prayer is over, you will see that they will start leaving. So it's not something that everybody's coming in at the same time and everybody's leaving at the same time. And then in our case, there will be a police director at the driveways. So in case the latecomers who are coming and if the parking lot is full, they will be stopped right there by the police director. There will be volunteers within the parking area from the mosque who will be coordinating with the police director. So if the parking lots are full, both the basement and the surface, the police can just tell them to move along. And if they have to come for a second, to attend the second prayer service, they will attend second prayer service, or they will go to any other mosque, or next time they will be careful to come early. So that's how it works. So like, again, I'm practicing Muslim. And I never seen, even like the mosque I go, it has only street parking. It doesn't even have any on-site parking. It's in a city block, like again, there's a street parking and you will see, like they never have, like of course, the people who are coming late, they have to walk a little bit further, but they can still find parking. But the same thing here at least we are providing 107 on-site parking. We don't anticipate, and plus 2 services. So we are distributing the people within like, technically if you count, it's like 214 spaces for the 2 services total, 107 for first service, 107 for second service. So I don't see, like, again, and I've been practicing, I've been attending different mosques. I've never seen that all like 100 or 3, whatever is the occupancy, everybody's coming at the same time and leaving at the same time.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Khan. All right, let's just briefly go through Mr. Cornell's report. It's dated April 16th, 2025. Actually, that's the date of the hearing. It's actually dated April 11th. Okay. All right. But in any event, let's turn to page 3. And some technical comments here. I just want to make sure that we can.
If you want me to sum up, I can.
All right, but let's go through them real quickly. All right, paragraph 5, confirmation that there'll be no outdoor activities or events taking place on the property outside of the building. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, paragraph 6, he'd like us to revise the grading to a minimum slope of 2%. Can that?
We will try again at the area in particular for this comment. It's pretty flat. We will try to get as much or as close possible to 2% without creating any drainage issues in the area. So, but yeah, we will work with your office and whatever best we can do, we will try to comply with that requirement.
All right, paragraph 7 is just a comment about deed consolidation, so that's not a problem. Paragraph 8 was a comment, I guess, from a earlier hearing where we agreed to address potential impacts of vibrations during construction on the adjacent properties, and that's a continuing condition. We'll do whatever we have to do with respect to that. Paragraph 9.
Hey, Larry, before you start, since we're talking about the soil and you're going to be removing a lot of it, you're going to put a time limit when the dump trucks can come in and come out?
Yeah, whatever. I think you have an ordinance that deals with times on that, but certainly we'll do it so as to not, to minimize any impact on the surrounding neighborhood.
Thank you.
Mr. Khan, paragraph 9, we're going to be able to use any of the material for the buffers?
Yes, we again, as I said, we will try to accommodate as much of the berms from the materials that will be excavated. Yes.
All right, number 10 is just a general comment. I think we have provided you with building exterior elevations. Number 11. All right, so I think they want some improvement layers on these sheets. You'll have to provide that for them.
Yes, I believe like during printing, probably some of the layers were frozen. So yeah, we will make sure that we'll address that issue.
All right, if you can address comments 1 and 2 under the sanitary sewer.
All right, sanitary sewer, I think there is a comment in the CME report about the area-wide study of sanitary sewer, if it can handle the additional flow from the proposed facility. And of course, I think since we are the same thing like the way we did the parking, that we are counting all the uses to basically be happening at the same time for the parking parking requirement. And I believe in your report, you mentioned that we should count the other uses as well for the sanitary sewer calculations, which we don't have any issue. However, again, this sanitary connection or sanitary design that we are proposing, it's subject to the approval of the utility authority. We are not triggering any TWA permit from DEP. We are not exceeding the 8,000 gallon threshold. My understanding, even if we include all the uses, we will be close to 2,000 or 3,000 gallons per day. However, this is a conservative approach. Again, the peak hour is the Friday prayer service only. So, but again, doing the area-wide study, it can, I'm not sure, and again, if we can talk further, like how far or how much you want, but again, it will be, we will be seeking will serve letters from the utility authority. And if they feel like there are any issues in the area in sanitary sewer flow or the flow that we will be generating from our property is going to impact, we will work with them, and whatever is required, we'll work with them and do it. But as far as the study, it is a very broad, like again.
We can work with you and the sewer department to come up with those requirements.
Thank you very much, yeah.
Okay. Water distribution comments, we can comply with those requests?
Same, yeah, the same
Okay.
thing, and again, we will work with CME on
Okay.
those items too.
All right, stormwater, I think,
Stormwater are mostly like housekeeping items. I think we addressed most of those comments between the previous report comments as well as the updated plans. But yeah, we don't have any issues with complying those with those.
all right, so any of those technical comments and storm sewer system, you'll comply with?
Correct.
All right, landscaping and lighting.
Yeah.
I think
We'll comply.
you'll comply, all right? I think, Jay, there was a request for some additional planning. We'll certainly, if we have the opportunity to do that, we'll do so.
It was a combination of using excess soil to create berms that you can raise the elevation and put additional screening in. That's what the intent is.
Yeah, and I will look into it and we'll try to comply as much as we can. And again, we'll work with your office.
All right, let's see, parking lot improvements and miscellaneous. I know paragraph 1, we're seeking a waiver for parking in the front yard setback. I think we've addressed that with prior testimony. Also paragraph 2, the interior sidewalks, and we're also asking for a waiver on that. Yeah, paragraph 3, we provided the sidewalk connection as requested by the board, so that's now on the plans. Paragraph 4 is a waiver request for head-to-head parking. That was something I believe we provided testimony at a previous hearing. Loading, number 5, loading. Jay, I think we indicated that the only loading that's going to occur here is delivery by a UPS or FedEx truck. We don't really have any other deliveries that occur.
Understood, but based on the ordinance, you're required to have it, so you're looking for a waiver.
We're looking for a waiver on that, yes. Number 6. I don't know, Adnan, you want to address number 6?
The deceleration lane. Yeah, we did discuss this with the county, and county is okay of not providing. Actually, they encourage not to provide a deceleration lane.
I think same condition. It's required by ordinance. You need a waiver.
We need a
but I
waiver.
understand
Yes.
the county doesn't allow it.
Okay, that's fine. 7 is just a general comment. That's fine with your fire official. 8.
We'll comply.
They'll comply. Traffic. I think, again, most of this has really been covered by Mr. Stimmel. at least paragraphs 1, 2, and 3. Paragraph 4, we will have police officers on Friday afternoons, Ramadan, and special events when necessary. And we have indicated that we have off-site parking at 3 Johnson Lane for 22 parking spaces. And for Ramadan, we'll utilize the Samsel School, just like we continue to use it for overflow parking. I think 5 is just a recitation of everything I provided for you earlier.
I think, Mr. Sachs, on item 5, some of those events, I don't think were specifically discussed in your reports. And the question is, do any of these events impact any of the parking space testimony you provided?
No, not at all. Let's see, number 6 is wedding receptions. Yes, we will not do wedding receptions there. There could be a wedding, but no reception. Number 7, I think Mr. Stimmel addressed earlier. Number 8, I think number 8 is just a general comment. Number 9. Number 9, I think, is conditions that you imposed on the Washington Road House of Worship. Certainly, we have no problem with that as well, Mr. Cornell.
I think 9 and 10 talk about conditions for future
Yep.
evaluations of as constructed situations to see if what you're proposing is working. If not, you may have to come up with other means to address those issues.
Yeah, and we will agree to come back to this board with new traffic studies, because I think that's really the issue. So yes, that's fine, Jay. And you know what, I think Mr. Fishinger also had some comments. Mr. Khan, let's just go to page 9 of his report. All right, so paragraph 7, you'll provide those turning templates, is that?
Yeah, we have a circulation plan, but yeah, we usually focused on the driveways. But we did run it throughout the site. And again, those points we can add to our circulation plan to make sure like the fire truck and passenger car trucks can have a free circulation throughout the site.
All right, and even on I know there's a comment about an SU 30 crossing the driveway center line. We will agree that any garbage pickup will occur during off hours, so there'll be no activity. So certainly crossing over shouldn't be an issue. Number 10, vehicle turning paths, you'll provide those?
Yes.
Okay, and number 11 deals with a concrete island. Is that going to be feasible?
That is something that we can definitely work with you, but again, the driveway, if you provide a concrete island, that will shrink the size of the drive aisle. Unless we make the driveway width wider, which means it will encroach into the buffer. So I think the easier solution is to provide no left turn. And again, it will be the police officer will be there, police director will be there, and that can be enforced through manual means and with the sign.
And I understand ultimately the design of the driveway is the county's purview since it opens to a county road.
Okay.
Thank you.
And finally, I think Mr. Fishinger has, in paragraph 13, has requested that we add some pedestrian warning signage, and we'll comply with that. And I think paragraph 14 we addressed already. All right, Mr. Chairman, I think we've covered all of the traffic and engineering. I don't know if your planner wants me to go through his report. I think a lot of it is a recitation of what was there previously, but let me just take a look at it real quickly.
If you wouldn't mind, in case it helps, from item E onward, I think we'll be in newer territory. Most of the items before them were already addressed.
Okay, great. Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, I think that concludes us reviewing the reports. The last report I have is from your Shade Tree Commission, and we will work with your Shade Tree Commission to restore whatever is necessary on the site.
Thank you. That's it?
Mr. Chairman, that's it.
Anybody have any questions on on CME's report?
Mr.
Barry,
Chair.
go ahead.
Mr. Khan, am I correct that despite the size of this proposed building, nearly 43,000 square feet, the maximum occupancy of the building is going to be limited to 321 people, correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. What's the applicant plan to do to make sure it's limited to that 321, given the size of this building?
Again, the size of the prayer hall is I think 321, I believe you mentioned. That is dictated by the fire code and fire marshal. So that it is what it is. Like, again, if they exceed and if there are fire inspection and they find that, they can be held in violation for that. So it's basically a code enforcement issue and code issue. And of course, for the safety of the parishioners as well, like they don't want to jam 500 people where only 300 people are allowed.
Yeah, and you understand that road, I believe it might be number one. It's certainly within the top 5 most dangerous county roads in Middlesex. You agree with that?
Right.
And we need to make sure that the amount of people going in, since you've limited the occupancy now to 321, we need to make sure that's being adhered to, and it doesn't help anyone if it's honored in the breach. And now it becomes a situation where we only know that it's you've exceeded that because we've seen the traffic back up on Ernston Road all the way back to Washington Avenue. No, is the applicant going to put any checks and balances in there to make sure that that 321 is adhered to? Are they going to be blocking off rooms? Is there going to be someone up front counting the people coming in? Are there going to be people up front to say the underground lot's full? That area is really bad. I think anyone who experiences that road, and I'm sure that the applicant doesn't want it to be a bad situation there for the parishioners. So my question is there anything that can be done to make sure that we keep it limited to that number and there's a checks and balance so we don't have a bad situation, say at 5 o'clock when it's already a nightmare situation?
Yeah, and let me respond. First of all, the activity on Friday is really in the afternoon. So it's really not during the rush hour. It's certainly when school lets out, probably the beginning of when school lets out. But we will, and certainly you can condition us to the hilt here. We will agree. Police activity there every Friday afternoon for both of those services. Police activity there during Ramadan. Police activity there during a special event, if God forbid there's a funeral and it's well attended. But the police will be instructed to not let anybody into that lot when it's full. We will have monitors that will also be in the parking lot that can report, if there's any available spaces down below. So
Larry, I'm sorry to cut you off, but these going to be dedicated monitors, or is it just going to be volunteers? Is there going to be someone whose position is, there's definitely going to be someone there to make sure?
Yes. Yeah, these are dedicated monitors.
Are they the 2 people that you have as employees of the mosque?
No, we'll make sure that these people are members of the mosque who are there all the time and are familiar with the parking configuration. The 2 people who will be there all the time are probably just secretaries in the office.
If I may add to the board member's comment also, I think the biggest limitation here that puts a check and balance to the occupancies are parking. Once the parking lot is full, nobody's allowed to come in. So whether it's 150 people, 200 people, or 300 people, I don't think so. Like the 300 people will be attending the Friday's mosque, Friday prayers anyway. But once the parking lot is full, the police directors will just make them move out.
That's not true because you have 22 other spots down in Johnson's Lane. Now, if you have 107 cars in and the other 22 people, you're over.
Yeah, but let me just add one other check and balance on this, is the fact that now that we have delineated where the prayer mats are, unlike other religions, we're not going to have people standing. You can't have people standing in a mosque. They've got to be on the ground, and they will have a dedicated prayer mat. I forgot the size of it, but whatever the size is, and that's how you see on the architectural plans that we've submitted, there are only a certain number of prayer mats in the men's prayer hall and then the ladies' prayer hall. Once those prayer mats are occupied, that's it. No one else is coming into the building. So there are some internal checks and balances as well. Listen, we're not building a mosque to attract 1,000 people. That's not what the goal is here. This is going to be a mosque that's going to be limited to 321 worshipers during any particular prayer.
To refresh my recollection, what is the current size of the congregation right now?
Well, right now we're getting about 270, I think, is what we're getting at the firehouse. We don't expect that that's going to change too much. There are a proliferation of mosques in the area. They tend to attract, people tend to go to the same mosque. So I doubt that the 321 mats will even ever be fully occupied on a Friday. And also, as we've indicated, we have two services. And we know that the first service tends to be double of what the second service. So I don't think, I understand the board's concern about checks and balances, but they're there.
And even if the police aren't there, there's going to be two dedicated individuals to assist with parking.
Yes.
When the police aren't there. So so for instance, if the underground lot's full, someone would notify people coming in. So you don't have a stacking issue on Ernston Road causing issues. It's going to be managed by two individuals, the parking in and out of the facility.
Right, but we will always have the police there. That I can assure you, and that can be a condition of any approval. So the police will always be there.
But not 24/7, obviously.
No, but I'm talking about on Friday afternoons, which is really the biggest prayer service. The other services maybe attract 30 attendees. We don't need the police there for 30 people coming in.
No, but there will be
Right.
people there, even for those non-sparse, those sparse events that are there.
I'm not sure it's really necessary when 30 people are showing up, but we will commit that the police will be there Friday afternoon, prayer services and Ramadan and special events. I don't think it's anything different than police being present at a church for Christmas Eve or for Easter Sunday, or for the police to be present during Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur at a synagogue. The other times when houses of worship have services, there's usually not a police presence because there's usually not as much activity. But on those special days, yes, and our special day happens to be Friday, there will be a police presence.
Anybody else have anything?
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Mr. Sachs, CME report, G traffic, number 5. 5D, Friday prayer, 1:20 PM to 1:45 PM, max of 200 attendees. Right? I find a one-off contradiction. So you had said the max occupants will be 321. If you look at 5A, you could have for the prayer for the deceased, max of 150 people. That makes the total of 350 people. Can you please explain?
I'm not sure where you're looking. Hold on a second. Let me just.
Number G, traffic, 5A and 5D.
5A and 5B.
D. D as in Dave.
Oh, D, I'm sorry, D, the Friday prayer. Yeah, I think Mr. Cornell's numbers, I think the numbers I provided, in testimony are the more accurate numbers. So, and I think Jay asked me that question, if the numbers that I provided in the day in the life are the accurate numbers versus what he has, so.
These numbers came from your traffic report. I think what the question is, if you combine D and A together, you'll exceed the 321 because you're saying.
Oh, D and A.
Yeah, that the prayer for the deceased takes place 15 minutes after the 1:20 PM, which is your afternoon prayer service. So if that happens on a Friday afternoon, then you might exceed the 321.
Is that a daily prayer?
For the deceased, is the janaza prayer, right?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, janaza prayer it doesn't have to be on Friday with the prayer services. It's usually held after the prayer services. the prayer services are over, then usually for family and friends, they stay over and they do the prayer for the deceased.
Yeah, that would be a special event.
Yeah, that would be a special event after the Friday service.
No, the only concern is there's only a 15-minute gap, right? So 15 minutes after the prayer service, in 15 minutes, you talk about 200 people leaving, 150 people entering.
I mean, I don't, there is no set time for the janazah prayer. It can happen anytime from sunrise to sunset. So basically, I think that usually what happens, like if it's a Friday, like when the Friday services are over, the family friends stay over and then do it. So if it's but usually, like if it's the case, since we have two prayer services, usually the janazah will be at the end of the second prayer service.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sachs, you talked about just a few minutes ago regarding the off-site parking. That is, if the flow becomes backed up or they're waived off, the next opportunity is going to be, likely it's the 22 spaces down at Mr. D's, which means that your attendees will have to traverse across one of the most major intersections in town. Now, I know probably more than most the availability of law enforcement at a time when this would occur. And in fact, the officers that you're looking for are probably going to be off duty, not on duty. How do you propose to safely see that those attendees get across the roadway in those particular circumstances?
As I mentioned, like on Friday, the obligatory portion is very critical. If you miss that obligatory portion, might as well you can do the prayer service at home. So people who might be parking in those 22 spaces will probably have to be the first ones there. Because let's say if you come at the tail end of the Friday service or the sermon, and you're looking for parking in the facility on site and you don't find it, by the time you go and park your car or in one of those 22 spaces and come back, you will miss the prayer service.
I understand that.
Yeah.
My question directly is
Safety.
right. What procedures are you taking for your attendees to be able to cross what is considered to be one of the 5 most dangerous intersections in Middlesex County? Because you can't depend on police officers that are already on site because they're going to be handling the flow into the site itself. So my question is, what other alternatives do you have for that? Are you going to use a shuttle service? Maybe that's an opportunity. I don't know, but I think having a vehicle sitting there is probably not a great idea either.
My understanding is like, I think that intersection has a crosswalk and a light, I believe there too, I believe, right before, they enter into this block. So
But there
like-
is, that's
like,
correct. And
yeah,
and
any
for schools
pedestrian-
and for
yeah.
students, there's obviously crossing guards to make sure that that's crossed safely. My
Okay.
question is, what would you do for your attendees? Because I think it's the same situation. It's going to be families traversing up there. I would be very concerned about them crossing that roadway.
You know what, and now you'll put your ex-chief's hat on. Okay.
That's why we have them here.
That's why he's here. Certainly, if there's a concern about safety, I'm wondering if we could utilize a borough crossing guard off duty, it would be a special officer.
I don't want to answer for the chief, but I know historically we have a minimal number to begin with. I think that probably isn't something that you could utilize unless it corresponds with the service. That was something that I was just asked if you would take a look at and come up with a plan for that.
Yeah, we certainly can, we can look into that, Councilman. And as I said, we're gonna, if the board acts favorably on this, we're gonna come back in a year. And I think our expectation is you're just not going to see that overflow parking being utilized. That there will be enough parking on our site with the 2 services on a Friday afternoon. And certainly if we have to address it, we will with other safety measures.
Seems to me that we hit these numbers right on the mark and that everything is fine and dandy if it works perfectly.
Right.
What do you got for growth?
Well, as I said before, Mr. Chairman, there's a proliferation of mosques in the area. There's one in Old Bridge. There's one in South River. There's obviously one now in, hopefully there'll be one in Sayreville. So there are a number of mosques. We know that our core group is roughly 270. Could it expand? Yes, certainly we hope that it does expand, but we also know that we are only limited to 321 attendees, during a Friday prayer. You know, it's almost a self-policing situation. If it turns out that this facility is in incredible demand and 1,000 people want to come here, they're not going to be there. They're going to sell the property and they're going to build a mosque somewhere else. But, you know, we always account for some growth, Mr. Chairman. We always account for some growth. But even from growth from, say, 270 up to 321, you know, we're talking about 20% growth. I mean, that would be almost extraordinary in any house of worship in this day and age. We just don't see that.
Seems to me you're going up, some religions are going down. I mean, it's. you know.
Exactly.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
Is there a formal lease with the new owner of the good, I call Mr. D's a Goodfellows with?
We have a, yes,
Okay.
we do, and we'll provide that.
And right now, they're not doing anything with that building? It's just sitting there vacant and, okay, no plans that?
That I can't answer, but we do have a lease with them.
Okay.
Hang on. We're going to open it up in a minute. Anybody else on the board have any questions? Mr. Sachs, do you want to wrap up?
You know what, Mr. Chairman, I probably would like to do that after the public portion.
You got it.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to take a 10-minute break and then we're going to come back and open it up to the public. So it's 25 after, everybody in their seat. You didn't rest. No.
So that's the question.
Alex?
So after additional review, it does appear that, in my view, a parking variance is necessary and 250 parking spaces are required. And I have spoken with Mr. Sachs, and I believe they will be seeking a variance.
Mr. Fisher, that's correct.
Anybody from the board have any comments? If not, I'll take a motion to open up to the public.
Motion?
Do I have a second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr. Chairman, I think we just need to clarify one issue with the
Go
applicant.
ahead.
Mr. Sachs, in light of the fact that your clients acknowledge the need for a variance, will you be resting this evening or providing additional, reserving to provide additional fact witness and expert witness testimony?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to reserve on that decision. I would request that you open up to the public. Certainly, they can make comment on anything. I don't have an issue. You know, I don't know what time, Mr. Chairman, you want to go
We're
to?
here until 11 o'clock or 10 of.
Okay,
We're gonna cut it at 10 of 11, so, I mean, we've got an hour and 40 minutes. So
thank you.
you're gonna reserve your right to,
Yeah, I'm going to reserve the right. Yeah, I haven't
Yeah.
made that decision yet, but
Okay.
certainly I don't want to
All
stop
right.
the public from making any.
so we're gonna take public testimony. You're gonna be able to speak and ask any questions of the board or the professionals that are here from either party. What I would like to remind you of is listen to the people that are speaking before you so we don't have redundant questions. If you're gonna make a point, that's fine. If you're gonna belabor a point and beat it to death, we don't need to do that, okay? So I've been asked, this is your time. Mr. Robinson, if you could come up, please come up to the mic, state your name and your address for the record. And please be considerate of the people that are speaking, so when you get up, you'll have the same consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim Robinson in Parlin. And despite what you just said, I'm going to apologize from the beginning. I couldn't hear everything that was said. I couldn't hear all the answers. So if I ask something that has already been asked, I apologize. I went to kindergarten here in 1965. I could hear better then, but the acoustics in this room were no better then than they are now. The first question is maybe procedural. I noticed that the notice didn't mention any parking variance being requested. Has it been determined that in fact there is a need for a parking variance? Or will that be determined at some point? And I couldn't hear anything you said, Counselor.
It has been determined that there is a need for a parking.
There is a need for a parking
Yes.
variance. Okay. And the notice did not specifically indicate that. There's the catch-all at the end that says any other variances that are necessary, but that typically that is used not when the applicant knows in the beginning that a variance is necessary, but if during testimony we find, oh, you need a variance for that. So I would just ask the attorneys to take a look at that and see. There are 7 members of the board present, voting members present, by the way. Is that correct?
That's correct.
7 tonight? Okay. So 2 are missing and there are not 2 alternates. I want to talk about, and I know this was discussed, and I'm so happy that I advocated for hiring the traffic expert because you touched on something that I want to touch on. And I sat on the board when the Dwarkadish Temple was before the board. And back then we realized that the ordinance that talks about seats is really designed for Christian or Jewish facilities, but not those that don't use seats, such as the Hindus or this one. So, but the other thing, and the ordinance says 1 parking space per 3 seats. The other thing that I note is that some of these other facilities, folks tend to go to services on Saturday or Sunday, and they can go as a family because they are not work days. So it might make sense that you would get 3 people in a car. I don't know if that is necessarily the case if folks are going, especially on a Friday afternoon. And I would ask, I know there was some question about what did they observe at the firehouse. I'm not sure that I understood that answer totally, but I think we have to talk about that a little bit to see if that 3-to-1 really applies on a Friday where folks wouldn't necessarily be coming from home with their families. They might be coming from work or some other place. So I think that's something to take into consideration. The other thing I think we have to take into consideration, and I asked during the break, what is the gender breakup? Because they're going to be 320 mats. I understand that it's approximately 80% men and maybe 20% women, because men have an obligation to go to service and women can pray at home. So I wonder if that has to be taken into consideration, that you're talking about, 250 men and mats and less for women. And I just think we have to figure that into the calculation. I would ask the traffic expert for the applicant and our traffic expert if, from a safety perspective, you think it is more desirable to have all of the parking on site. I think we all know the answer to that. Mr. Muller, you quoted the county report that I was going to talk about, and Chief Zabrowski talked about how dangerous that intersection is. I think that has to be taken into consideration. I don't know, and I'm a former planning board chairman, I don't know if another business in town can allocate their parking spaces to somebody else. What happens if at some point in time that restaurant decides to open? And those 22 parking spaces have been delegated or relegated to somebody else. So I think we have to talk about that. The other thing is, I think we have to talk about, and I'm going to ask if there were any other alternative plans. Mr. Cornell, you talked about the van situation that was that was part of the plan. If the Dwarkadish Temple was approved, I was involved with that, and that's entirely different because, at the Hindu temple, people don't come every Friday. People come only 4 or 5 times, or have to come only 4 or 5 times a year, but they come in great numbers. So that's different, but the agreement, the applicant agreed to have a minimum of 10 vans to shuttle people. Chief, you talked about if they're going to use those 22 spaces, should there be a van? I think that ought to be considered, because really anybody who crosses Bordentown Avenue at the intersection of Ernst Road is really taking their life in their hands when they do that. The other concern I have about that is, I think you are only going to go to those 22 spaces if you first go and see that the 107 spaces are filled up, and you then have to go there. So I think that creates a little bit of a problem that might make it difficult. So I'm going to ask the applicant, and specifically the applicant's traffic engineer, do they have a plan there? Have they looked at any other plans? Have they run by the idea of the 22 spaces across Bordentown Avenue by the Police Traffic Safety Bureau? And what is their opinion of that, if they have? And I noticed when there was discussion about that, and I mentioned this before, that Mr. Sachs responded, the traffic engineer did not. And I would respectfully suggest that that is the purview of the traffic engineer, and the traffic engineer ought to be answering those questions about traffic, with all due respect to my friend, Mr. Sachs, who shouldn't be testifying at all, and certainly not about traffic. So I would put that question to their expert. I don't know, maybe this was addressed. I don't know if the deceleration lane was talked about. You know, I think the ordinance says if you have 100, more than 100 spaces, that there's supposed to be 200 feet of deceleration. I know the county planning board had some concerns. They don't necessarily want that. I'd like to know how this board feels. I'd like to know if this application actually went before the county planning board and got approval, or there was an informal review and they made these comments. And if they did go, when they went. And Mr. Mueller, I'm glad you asked the question about limiting occupancy, so I don't have to do that. And Chief, I think you asked a lot of my questions, but I do have at least those questions. And oh, one other question. Has the applicant considered any other, two other questions, I'm sorry. Has the applicant considered any other scenarios for off-site parking? And if so, what are they, what were they? And why were they not presented? And the final question is, if the board determines, and I think they have determined that a parking variance is necessary, what is your plan if the parking variance is not granted? That's it. Those are all my questions.
Well, I'm trying to piece together what Mr. Robinson asked. So I think the first question he asked was about the 22 parking spaces. I'm not sure what his exact question was, but perhaps the use of a shuttle bus, if we thought of that. I think the second question was, had we looked at other?
Well, do you have an agreement with?
We have a written lease with them.
For how long?
Jimmy, how long is that lease? I think it's 5 years plus another 5-year option. So
Thank
it's
you
a
very
fairly
much.
long-term lease.
Okay.
And we haven't thought about a shuttle bus for Johnson Place. I will tell you that if necessary, and I know the chief brought it up about safety at that intersection, if we needed to employ additional police personnel to monitor that traffic signal for any pedestrians that might be crossing, we're willing to do that. We mentioned the fact about the crossing guard, but I'm not sure if that's feasible or not. But, you know, we're amenable to employing whatever additional safety measures might be necessary.
Thank you.
I'd like to know if, from the police department, if they think that intersection is a safe spot to put an officer. That's a very dangerous intersection.
Honestly, I don't believe we ever got any response from the police that there were any issues, quite frankly, with respect to the project as a whole. I don't recall I don't think we got a memo from them or any input from them. But as I said, we're certainly willing to employ any additional measures for safety if necessary.
That's it?
Okay. Anybody else?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sir, go ahead.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council, fellow citizens. My name is Steve Nero. I live at 3 Skytop Gardens, apartment 24, off Ernston Road. My concern is the traffic gentleman counted the cars that were going into the firehouse. Ernston Road is a lot more busy than Cheesequake Road. And the traffic there is sometimes you're stuck at Washington Road to Route 9. It's backed up traffic. They consider they're gonna have 30, 40 cars extra, that they consider all the cars that are there already for each service. And with cops being there to guide people in and out, it's gonna cause more of a jam. And if you put crossing guards, that's even gonna slow things down more. And that's my only concern.
Just for your information,
So the board is not permitted to deny an application simply because it will add traffic to an already backed up road, especially when that's a county road. If it's a permitted use, then that traffic cannot be used to deny an application.
Ma'am?
Carol Esposito, Parlin. My first thing I want to say is.
Where are you from?
Parlin, 6 Villanova Road.
Thank you.
My first thing I want to say is, we keep talking about 22 parking spaces at Mr. D's. It is not 22 parking spaces, it is 19. Went there myself and I counted them. The letter submitted by the current owner says that the usage is for Fridays between 12 and 3. However, it was testified that they can use it at any time. So I just want clarification on that, and we would love to see the contract, if you will. Also, is there a written contract with the Sayreville Board of Education, and for how long to use their facilities? The board asked the question of what is the number of people in the congregation, and I just want to go over that. What's the number of people in the congregation? Yeah, that's a
Respond when she's
question.
done, if she's making comments.
No, that's a question. What's the number of people in the congregation?
Well, we presently have approximately 270 attendees going to the firehouse, which is probably the same that we had at the old site.
Okay, so that's 270 men. How many are part of your
No,
congregation?
that's total.
So on Fridays at the firehouse, the women are also there and the children?
Yes.
I'm not sure about that being accurate. Let me see, one more thing, let me see here. Oh, I've been there, I live nearby, we've seen. I think that's, the next part is, when I'm looking at the CME report, and we're looking at the non-prayer hall areas, 59 spaces for the basketball court, 3 spaces for the office staff, 53 spaces for the classrooms, and 28 parking spaces for the assembly area. That's 143 parking spaces, and you have 107, I believe. So that also goes into play. So we keep talking about that the prayer halls will be used during one time, and all the other spaces would be able to be used during another. So all of those other spaces would require 143 parking spaces. So there's also a discrepancy in having enough parking. That's all I've got for right now.
Anybody else have anything to say? Sir, you're next.
Good evening. My name is Rick Connolly. I live on Cheesequake Road in Parlin, near the firehouse. And Mr. Skibble, is that correct? You're familiar with that firehouse? You did the study there?
The Madison Park, yes.
Madison Park Firehouse, exactly. Did you actually count the number of cars that were at the firehouse while the prayer services were going on?
Yes.
And what kind of car count did you get?
We counted 195 vehicles entering during a 4-hour period on Friday, May 17th of last year, and 159 vehicles over a 4-hour period on Friday afternoon on January 17th.
Okay, my
of this year.
apologies. Did you count how many were parked at any individual time? I happen to live there, and I did. And if you count the number of vehicles that were in the parking lot, and they parked illegally, by the way, and the cars that were parked in front of the parking area, and the cars that were parked on the side of the firehouse, and the cars that were parked on the hill by the Little League field, and the cars that were parked across the street, I totaled an absolute minimum of 126 cars. Has anybody actually gone there? Well, I know one of my friends did. Has anybody actually gone there and physically counted cars? I mean, we're talking about this, that would make sense, would it not? That's a question.
We did, yes, we did count the cars on the dates that I indicated.
And
all this data has been provided previously to the board. You know, we
the number of cars parked in the parking lot was, board, can you, anybody tell me what that number was?
Is it, the number that you came up with, is that the people in the parking lot, not on the ancillary Little League field across the street? You just counted the cars that are in the lot.
The parking lot adjacent to the fire hall, the parking lot adjacent to the baseball field. If anybody's parked illegally across the street on somebody's driveway, we didn't count that.
They were not parked illegally. They directly in front of the parking lot though, there's chain.
Correct.
And you're not supposed to park there in front of the chain. And they did. I mean, there was 8 cars, 1, 2, 3, 4, the opening, 1, 2, 3, 4.
They counted?
Those were counted. The cars on the site were
Wait,
counted.
you said the illegally parked cars weren't counted. Those were illegally
I
parked
said
cars.
illegally parked cars across the street
Oh,
were
okay.
not counted. If you let me finish.
Okay.
The cars on the property we counted on both sides of the building, the parking lot side and the other parking lot by the baseball field. The striping in the parking lot for the fire hall is vague at best. But from going to the site on January 17th, there were additional parking spaces available. With the new proposed site, obviously, we've got much better delineation of the parking, and as with the other stipulations that the applicant has agreed to, there would be a requirement that nobody's allowed to park on the grass outside of a striped parking space and so on.
All right, somewhere I got lost. I still didn't get a number. How many cars were parked at one time during the service?
I could look through my notes and give that to you.
Please
It
do.
wasn't presented in that format.
Okay, I guess I'm done, guys. Can anybody help me out here?
Mr. Chair, are we at the point where we should be swearing in members of the public, or is this just questions regarding the testimony from tonight?
It's kind of blending right now, and Mr. Sachs, the question is, have you rested your case to open it up to full public comment, or are we still just doing questioning of the witnesses for this evening?
We're still doing questioning.
Okay.
So the question is, we need the number from the parking expert. And
Yeah,
that
we'll-
would satisfy the gentleman at the.
We'll
parking-
provide that. It may take
Okay.
us a few seconds or a few minutes, but
It's gonna get that number for you.
Right, get the number for you. I know the number. I counted them.
Mr. Chair, can we,
I did. I've been over there 4 or 5 times. Hang on, we got a question coming up. You're next.
Mr. Chairman, if you want to continue with the public, we'll provide that information.
All right,
So,
gentlemen, whoa. Ma'am, in the back? Yep.
can we just make sure that the public knows that this comment period is not the public's chance to be sworn under oath to provide this? So if people are coming up with comments, that if they want to present their sworn testimony at a later time, as opposed to these comments where they're not sworn, because right now the questions themselves are not evidence in this hearing.
Okay, so I can ask questions, not testify, correct?
I just want to make sure, because I don't want
That's
people
fine.
to.
I have both,
No,
so
no,
I'll do
people-
one or the other, it doesn't matter.
No, I just don't want to make sure
Okay.
people come here tonight, ask questions and think that that is testimony too. They'd have to come back for the public portion where the public is sworn
I've
and
been
give
coming
testimony.
back here every night since
Okay.
over a year now, so please.
Okay.
All right, my name is Elizabeth Pinella. I live at 10 Parkway Place. My backyard has a small area of township land, and then it's adjacent to their property. I've been coming here and listening to this testimony that I had a whole testimony on lifts and stuff, and now the lifts are out. So like, you're wasting people's time. I have some other questions. Regardless if what I say or what anyone in this room says, I have already been told this is a done deal and it's just gonna happen regardless if I like it or not.
I don't know who you heard that from.
Well, that's the
I mean,
consensus.
You know,
So-
it's not true, ma'am.
Okay, well, good, because my house is maybe 2,000 square feet. My property is maybe 1/6 of this property. Maybe a little bit more, maybe 1/8, if that. You're planning on building a building that is 20 times more larger than my home for 270 people in this congregation, possibly going up to 300 and some people that you can have there at a time. I want to know things like, how long is this construction going to take? How is it going to affect my home, my yard, and my quality of life with noise, dust, rumbling? What happens if my foundation is damaged? What happens if there is a spring or something underground that is hit and water just starts going and floods the area? What happens when it rains and the sewer, who already gets backed up, and my neighbors have problems and the township has to come out and clean it? This is just gonna add to that. If there's rain, Ernston, Bordentown, at the bottom of Parkway Place, floods. If they have people parking, and I'm very sorry, not everybody's gonna say, oh, I can't park here, let me just go down, cross Bordentown and park over here. They're gonna go through the neighborhood and park in the streets because they already park illegally. They don't care. And what's to prevent them from that? If anything is done wrong and we complain and they don't follow ordinances and they get penalized, who's gonna enforce these things? Already there's been problems that I was told everything was dismissed and we are no longer allowed to talk about it. I've seen over 200 cars in the yards and the back areas with people waving red things to park them. This is not what I want. And according to testimony, depending on the day of the week or the time, they can start services at 6 a.m., have services during the day, then use basketball courts and stuff till 10 at night. And, you know, people coming, going, maybe they're gonna be this one, but not prayer at the same time as everything else. I really do not believe that this building is the right size for this neighborhood. The people that live there do not need such a large structure there, regardless if it's a religious building or anything else. I firmly respect everybody's right to practice their religion.
You have to turn that into a question. This is a question and answer.
Okay, so what happens when they don't follow the rules?
The code enforcement comes in play. The town code enforcement.
And what happened to code enforcements that weren't followed in the past that were just dismissed? We are no longer allowed to talk about them, right? Because they already broke some codes, they were already brought up and everything was dismissed. So that gives me a lot of hope that if rules are not followed, that codes are gonna be enforced.
So ma'am, you asked a couple of really good questions there. The first is with respect to code enforcement. And I actually asked Mr. Sachs this earlier this evening, confirm it to be part of the records that should the application obtain approval, this would be part of what we call the memorializing resolution, which is that all of these operational conditions, all of the issues regarding occupancy, timing of usage, parking, would all be agreed to and be part of the memorializing resolution and run with the property, and ask Mr. Sachs to confirm that they understand that this would then be subject to code enforcement through the Sayreville Code Enforcement Office. And you know, there's some in the law can be tricky and can be a pain to people sometimes, right? So here, what we'd be saying is, if there were to be an approval, all of those terms, the applicant's agreeing to right now, and they're saying, we understand that this is the standard, we have to meet it, there's no gray area. And that if they don't, and code enforcement determines there's a violation, code enforcement can enact it. As opposed to if, it's questionable as to, well, where are you parked? What are you doing? What's this? Here with this site, there's very specific standards being adopted. And so code enforcement, their job, I would say, would be easier from a code enforcement official perspective. So then you raised another really good question about what would the impact of your property be during construction? Unfortunately, I don't know that any developer or residential or commercial property owner can ever say how long a project will take. There's a lot of things that can obviously impact that, right?
Yeah, will we have an estimated number on how
But-
long it's gonna
but
take?
As far as the protection of your foundation and the infrastructure, I believe it was last fall, could have been even earlier than that. There was a condition put on this that the applicant agreed to, that there would be monitoring of the vibrations and of the impact caused, dust, sound caused during the construction process. And that would be monitored because other residents, and I know it wasn't you just because I remember it was a gentleman who got up and raised this, who lives near you, raised this exact issue, which is a
Yeah, I'm
legitimate
sure all
issue.
my neighbors are concerned.
And-
We have houses there. I mean, I've been living in this development for 6 decades.
And
And
this
you-
item.
Nobody cares, like, just ruin my life. Who
And this
cares?
issue was also raised by Mr. Cornell of CME in his report. And so if this construction were to occur, the applicant would have an obligation to undertake monitoring. That information would be available to the town. And that's to ensure that their work they're doing on the site is, while all construction is disturbing, right? No one can sit here and say that, having people dig holes, pour cement, build framing, right? All of that's going to make noise, but they monitor it to ensure that there would not be off-site damage as a result of what they're doing. And so should this application be approved, one of the requirements would be that monitoring take place and that information reports be available, and that to ensure that residents such as you would not suffer damage to their property as a result.
And if we do, then we can what? Have repercussions?
Well, they would, I imagine that they would, what the process is, that then they stop work orders is what's usually issued then. And it prevents work from going forward.
Mr. Sachs, you've already agreed that if there is any damage, that you would be responsible for it.
Well, we agreed that we would perform an analysis of vibration, as a result of any construction that's ongoing. I mean, again, damage.
How big is the hole? How
Well,
deep is the hole and how wide? And that they have to build a really deep, wide hole to put an underground garage.
Again, Mr. Chairman, if I can finish, yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, we've agreed to, and it was one of the requests, and I think Mr. Pullman has indicated that it was at one of the earlier meetings, that we would do a vibration analysis of anytime we're doing construction over there to ensure that there's no damage to other houses.
Well, let me ask you a question. When they built Town Lake, they had a situation like this where they were doing impact, and some of the foundations got cracks in them, and the developer went and fixed them. If that happens,
I can't commit to that, Mr. Chairman, because I don't know if there's a again, let me please finish, all right? I can't commit to determining whether or not my client caused that damage or the damage was a pre-existing problem. All right, I've been doing this a long time, and that's always a gray area. But certainly,
all right, would you agree to inspecting the immediate foundations in case there is any vibration?
yes, in conjunction with the building officials in the borough of Sayreville. So we're not going to undertake any construction that's going to cause any problems on any adjacent properties, and we'll coordinate that with borough officials, which, by the way, would probably be standard anyway.
Okay.
So,
right, well, you guys let me know when I can not testify or, I mean, when I can testify and give you my real good opinion and not ask a question.
Yeah, ma'am, you're next.
Good evening, Michael Can, 12 Vincent Street, Parlin. Mr. Sachs, I guess I have questions first for you. And again, it'll go back to a previous question I had between commentary and testimony of Mr. Sachs during his statements. What and how do we differentiate between the two? Which testimony do we take to be fact, your traffic engineer or your references to the form that use the right terminology according to your documentation provided in this evening's packaging with the spreadsheet and the colors of the utilization and traffic cars generated by site. Which one? Parking demand table is how it's listed. What is your testimony that the traffic demand table has accurate counts? Or is it your traffic engineer's report of 5/17/24 and 1/17/25, which is fact to be entered into evidence or testimony?
Well, I didn't give any traffic testimony. All I did was give a recitation of a document in summary form that was submitted to the board, which was a day in the life of a masjid, which was a quarterly breakdown, and then the detailed usage of the rooms and in the facility. Then we provided a spreadsheet which just indicates the expected use of various rooms during various times of the day and during various days of the week. So I didn't give any traffic testimony. Certainly my traffic engineer has testified at great length at various hearings as to his findings. But I'm not sure what your question is of me.
Is there any value of this sheet I'm looking at?
Is there any value of it?
Correct.
Well, I think the value of it is it's indicating what the expected demand would be for parking based upon those various uses. And that was contained, and that was transcribed on there based upon documentation prepared by the mosque as to when they expect these rooms will be utilized and what the expected number of attendees are. So all I gave was basically just a summary of that report.
But you forwarded it as information, not testimony.
It's been forwarded as an exhibit for consideration by the board.
Although it represents numbers substantially less than your traffic engineer's report.
It represents numbers based upon, well, first of all, it's based upon their experience in terms of what's happening at the firehouse. And those numbers have been supported by Mr. Stimmel.
Mr. Stittle's report shows essentially double the 83 daytime cars on a Friday afternoon. 83 on this report versus 195 on Mr. Stimmel's report from May 17th. And that perhaps did not include any on-street parking at the firehouse.
We did several iterations of the traffic study for the board's consideration. We had initially counted traffic volumes at the site driveways on a Friday afternoon when the site was in operation at 216 Ernston Road. We did an analysis based on that and submitted it to the board. The board asked us to include the intersection of Ernston Road and Bordentown Road. We did that. There was concern about the fact that the updated traffic counts were done when school was out of session, and it was merely a function of when we received the comments and mobilized to do the traffic counts. So we did updated traffic counts when school was back in session. We counted the fire hall twice. We analyzed several different iterations of driveway operations and intersection operations. We accounted for future growth. We tried to use the existing distribution between the early and late services. We tried to account for the fact that we were going to provide additional parking through the lift mechanisms, which have since been revised. I think that's the report that you're looking at.
Yes.
We had also been asked to do an analysis for other peak times of the week. Because the congregation is currently meeting at the fire hall for Friday services, we've got a pretty good real-world idea of how many people are going to those two services. In terms of who's going to be using the basketball court on Tuesday night, who's going to be taking religious education on Saturday afternoon, that's a little bit more of an estimation based on how we think the site is going to be used. We still believe the Friday services are going to be the key. If you look at it using the old projections, the movements at the driveways are adequate. If you look at it based on the new projections, which were taken from that parking table that you're referring to, the operations are again going to be adequate. I think the only thing that maybe changes between the two is that because we've eliminated that lift parking, there probably needs to be a more even distribution between the first and second service. But consistently throughout, using the different analyses that we've been requested to do, we found that the levels of service have generally been level of service D at the driveway. No real change to the intersection of Ernston Road and Bordentown Road. And there's actually projected to be a slight improvement over that level of service D at the driveways with the police traffic directors. So we've done a lot of different scenarios, and I think that's where the confusion might be coming in here.
What is the average time to exit the facility when you did the test at the original facility? And how many cars actually left the parking lot?
I haven't provided any testimony about that study from 2 years ago. If you want, I can go look through my notes, but the site cleared relatively efficiently at the time. We had a video of the site operations, and my recollection is that it cleared in about 20 minutes.
Is that a recollection or is that your testimony?
It's my testimony that that's my recollection. I've previously provided extensive testimony on that issue, but not during tonight's hearing.
But not how many cars left?
I previously provided extensive testimony about that, but not at tonight's hearing.
What is the difference between delay of service level C and D?
Depending on the situation, it can be as much as 20 seconds, or it can be as little as a fraction of a second. Each of the levels of service provide a range. And if you are right on the border of going from a C into a D, it can be a very minute difference.
Is it your testimony that there will be no bus on property?
Yes, that's the testimony from the applicant.
Parking, when parking lot is full, police officers say you cannot park here, and the first available parking spot is Parkway Place. What prevents people from parking on Parkway Place, Lewis Street, and Center Street, and making a loop around to make another bite at the entrance to your facility?
Mr. Chairman, in terms of parking on residential streets, we would also agree to a condition that we will not have our attendees parking on any residential street in the vicinity. That's certainly enforceable.
So it could be residents have a permit to park there and non-residents would be ticketed?
That could be one scenario, all right? Or certainly if we agree to a condition in the resolution that there are vehicles parking on the street and they're attending the mosque, they're going to get ticketed. All right.
We don't want to do that. That's poor neighbors. That's not what my desire. I don't think that's anybody's desire, just to create animosity, which is what that creates. And that's unfortunate because it's not what the intent is. It's to want to be safe, get in and out of the neighborhood safely and not get into accidents. I've been hit. I've driven for 40 years in and out of the neighborhood. It's very difficult. Now, is it my understanding that testimony today offers that there will be no left turns out of the mosque facility? Is that what I heard earlier? That is not represented on any of the drawings?
There will be no left turns out of the western driveway. There is, I believe, signage shown on the site plan, and we agreed to provide additional signage to reinforce that restriction as well as striping showing a right turn only.
How many parking spots do you have in the setback that the variance will request?
That's a question for another witness.
Who pays for the police?
What was the question?
Who pays for the police presence?
That would be paid by the mosque.
Do they have authority to interact on the property?
Do they have authority to interact on the property? In what manner?
You said that they were going to direct traffic in and out of the parking lots based upon density and filled parking spots.
Well, I don't know normal police protocol, but certainly they're going to direct traffic at the intersection. And they're probably going to direct traffic that's in the surface parking lot as they exit.
Which exit will they be patrolling and policing?
That's up to the police department to determine.
Mr. Khan, I have questions for you, if that's possible. I believe you've testified that you've designed 15 mosques in New Jersey. Magnificent. Is this the largest?
No,
Would it benefit from a walkway around the perimeter of the parking lot to facilitate people walking from Parkway Place and or 3 Johnson's Lane to walk?
I didn't get it. Can you repeat that question, please?
uh,
Repeat that question.
A walkway to not make people walk across your exit would benefit. It's a question if it would benefit. I have an opinion, but would it not benefit to have a walkway outside of the driveways of families getting out and walking into your facility?
Usually we are showing a driveway connecting Ernst Road to the front door of the mosque.
It's center.
It's center.
You would have to
I would
walk
say it's a little bit
across.
offside, yeah. But I think it's pretty standard design practice. Like usually you'll see it in malls and small areas that's pretty standard practice, engineering practice. So I don't see any issues with that.
Do your plantings in the planting design on the drawings inhibit view up and down Ernst Road with traffic
No,
moving at speed?
no.
Let me just 1 second to make sure I got everything covered, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
I guess I do have one other question. Just correct, it's your testimony that the multipurpose room and the basketball court will not be used as prayer overflow rooms when the 321 mats are full?
Yes, we've made that commitment at prior hearings. We'll make that commitment this evening. The only facilities that will be used for ritual activities for prayers will be in the men's prayer hall and in the ladies' prayer hall.
There was testimony earlier that families attend the 2,300 square foot facility now. Would those people not qualify as doing other activities besides being in the prayer hall at that time and count for other uses in those other rooms that you say are not being used?
There will be no other activities occurring. I've said it several times. There will be no other activities occurring on site when the prayer is being conducted.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I just want to add, it's our religious practice. When the prayer service is happening, you're not allowed to do anything else but to come into the prayer hall and do your prayers. It's a religious practice, obligation.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Ma'am, you still want to speak? Hit me.
Hi, Sharon Rodis in Sayreville. I'm just curious.
Where in Sayreville?
Oh, Second Street.
Thank you.
What is the purpose of the planning board? Is it to protect the neighborhood, keep the neighborhood safe? What is the planning board's?
Planning
function?
boards in the state of New Jersey have a couple of roles, depending on what they're being asked to do. When planning boards are hearing applications, they're sitting in a quasi judicial capacity, meaning that they're acting almost as a judge. And Their job is to evaluate applications that come before them and determine whether or not the application satisfies the criteria for approval. If the applicant is seeking any sort of relief, whether it's a design waiver, which are some type of relief that you've heard in this, which is a lower standard of sort of being granted. I'll say that colloquially, council may disagree with me. If that's met, the board must also determine if there's a variance being sought, whether or not the criteria for a variance is met. And that involves balancing two different types of criteria, positive and negative criteria that are offered by the applicant, that are offered by objectors, and information that's provided by fact witnesses for everybody. So the planning board, when it's hearing an application, is not an advocate. It's very clear. It is a judicial entity in a way. And its job is to evaluate facts and apply those facts to the law and determine whether or not the application should be granted, and if the application contains relief, whether that relief should be granted. Planning boards also serve in a context of a more legislative capacity when they're reviewing and developing a master plan. And so there's times when they're not acting as a judge or a court, but they're acting in developing long-term planning for a municipality, and that's the master plan. And then really the third role that a planning board plays is that a governing body and also once a year, the zoning board will send to the planning board ordinances for review and ask, do these ordinances comply with our master plan? Do they comply with our overall scope of land use planning for the municipality? So those are really the three roles that under New Jersey state law planning board has.
So nowhere under your watch are like the watchful eye for keeping the neighborhood safe.
Yeah, well, safety is the
Yeah.
responsibility of the
I
police.
think
Ma'am,
basically what everybody is so concerned about
Ma'am, I'll
is
answer all of your
traffic.
questions. Okay, safety is the responsibility of the police department. Safety is the responsibility of the code enforcement department. Safety is the responsibility of the governing body, who's your legislature, who creates and adopts ordinances. This board's job is not to be an advocate. This board's job is to sit in an impartial manner, evaluate applications, and determine whether or not the applicant has met the criteria to receive the relief that they're seeking. As far as having affirmative responsibilities, that falls to more of the administrative part of your municipal government, which are your different departments, the mayor's office, and the governing body.
In this town, is there any other structure that has an underground parking facility?
Not that I know of.
Okay. The man who designed 15 mosques, have you designed an underground facility like this large?
Actually, yes, we designed it 2 levels of underground, not just one.
Where was
With the
that?
ramp, yeah. Actually, we are doing one in Jersey City.
In Jersey City?
Yeah.
You don't know what's going to happen when you start digging that deeply into the ground in Sayreville. The whole surrounding area, we're surrounded by swamps and rivers, and you don't know what's going to happen to the foundations, and that's the safety of people's houses. And I hear them saying they're not going to commit to anything if anything happens to anybody's property.
It's not what I said.
I understand.
And by the way, just so the member of the public is aware, we have to do geotechnical studies to determine what's under the ground.
Before you dig.
Correct.
And that was part of your testimony before, and you agreed to do all of that.
Yes.
You also agreed that you'll do a vibration test and that you will look at the adjacent homes before you do anything?
When you dig that parking garage, are you going to have to pump in pilings to support it?
Not necessarily. So, yeah, I mean, usually there are specific requirements when you have to do piling. Based on the geotechnical investigation, type of the results we get, it can be just simple spread footing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Gentleman with the glasses.
Drew Weingarth, Weingarth, East Brunswick, New Jersey. But as I've previously said, I grew up in the Parlin section of Old Bridge, specifically in Madison Park. In describing the planning board, you forgot to say that the planning board has class while the zoning board is classless. Sorry. Is the planner returning to ask the planner questions, since at the meeting 6 months ago, the meeting was stopped at 11 o'clock and not everyone had the opportunity to ask the planner questions?
I don't recall if that was the case, but there is a likelihood we'll have our planner come back.
Thank you very much. I can wait to ask planning questions for the planner. I do have questions for the traffic expert. We have asked this question in the past. You have said in doing your studies, you have asked both the borough of Sayreville and the township of Old Bridge if there are ongoing projects in the area. If our last meeting was 6 months ago, when was the last time you checked on that and what was the answer?
The last time I checked was prior to the last hearing. The answer was that there were no studies which would, there were no projects being developed in the area which would impact our site frontage or adjacent intersection.
So based on what you just said, you said that would impact this application.
Correct.
Within this past 6 months, the Sayreville Planning Board has been very busy hearing applications. Leeway there is impact. I believe this planning board has heard possibilities or studies for the mini mall on the other side of Route 9 along Ernston Road under possible redevelopment. You're not aware of that?
I'm willing to take your word for it. Like I said, I haven't asked the planning board in Sayreville or Old Bridge since prior to the last meeting.
Off of Journey Mill Road, there's a potential cold storage facility warehouse going up that has also been in front of this planning board. You're not familiar with that for trucks coming? I mean, before you answer, I'm sorry. The planning board's attorney recently said that it's difficult, especially for a county road, on judging for other things coming on, which I realize. I guess I'm asking, you're not aware, since you asked, of what I just asked?
We did a traffic study. We contacted the boards in Old Bridge and Sayreville. At that time, there was nothing which would impact our analysis. We've done multiple rounds of counts. The other thing I'd say is that this is an impact analysis. So if there's another project which is developed and we add our traffic on top of that, we're not looking at the absolute volume of traffic. We're looking at the impact of our site onto that. And it's really a very limited extent to that because this is a planning board application, but I don't know that adding traffic from some of these redevelopments would make much of a difference, because again, it's the background.
Thank you for that very much. You said from a previous public question that you have been at the firehouse to observe. How would you describe the parking lot itself at the firehouse? To the right-hand side where majority of the cars are parked.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
I'm sorry, it's my fault for not asking the specific question. Are there lined spaces for parking spots at the firehouse?
This I had actually mentioned before. There is some signs of striping, but it's very faded.
Thank you very much. For hoping that people do not park, again, this is in the Parlin section of Old Bridge, But for people who are not having the opportunity to park within the firehouse, never mind along Cheesequake, there's a road that's perpendicular to Cheesequake in Madison Park called Cornell. For the record, all roads in Madison Park are named after universities. The road on Long Cornell that's perpendicular to Cheesequake is directly across from it's diagonally across from the firehouse. There are people who do park on Long Cornell to attend the service at the firehouse. Well, again, I'm sorry, it's not a specific question. Did you look at Cornell Road for possible parking for the firehouse?
There was a gentleman who came up before that had a similar question, I think. We did not look at the parking across the street. When I observed the parking at the firehouse, there was still additional spaces available between the lot adjacent to the firehouse or the lot adjacent to the baseball field. So there didn't seem to be a strong impetus for people to park further away.
Thank you very much. This application is very unique because Ernston Road is literally on the border. Yes, we've established it's a county road, but it's unique because it's on the border of the Parlin section of Sayreville and the Parlin section of Old Bridge. So I really appreciate that Sayreville has a code enforcement and that they would be enforcing their rules for Sayreville. What happens in the case when the mosque on Ernston Road is built, in which there's going to be possible violations for parking on the Old Bridge side? And I'll be more specific. This Old Bridge has been very nice to this mosque site, whether it was St. Bernadette's Church or the firehouse. So when they used to use St. Bernadette's Church, they would walk down Villanova and cross over Ernston Road. That still could be, so you mentioned possible crosswalks. Is one of the crosswalks going to be you mentioned the crosswalk from where Mr. D's, so to speak, was to cross over, Bordentown Avenue. Are you taking in consideration the Old Bridge side to cross from Villanova over to Ernston Road to attend this mosque?
Is the question if we've looked at adding a crosswalk across Ernston Road to get from Old Bridge to the site?
Yes.
We had talked about it very preliminarily when the applicant was pursuing parking, off-site parking through St. Bernadette's Church. For whatever reason, and I don't know what that reason was, that never moved ahead. So we abandoned the plan at that time to look at that crosswalk.
Thank you. I think I can hold off the rest for the planner. I thank everyone for your time, and Mr. Chairman, I hope your knee's doing better.
It is. Thank you very much. Lady with the hand up. Getting on 10:30. We're out of here at 5:11.
I'll be pretty quick. My name is
Take your
Jennifer
time.
Edwards, 10 Vincent Street, Parlin, New Jersey. I just have a few questions for, I guess, Mr. Sachs. As someone else had also questioned, in pulling up a Google Maps overview of the site at 3 Johnson's Lane, there I can clearly count 19 spaces, parking spots. Do you wish to modify your testimony? And I know the letter does state 22 spaces.
Well, our lease is for 22 spaces. I'm not going to necessarily rely upon a Google map. I mean, we may think it's pretty accurate, but unfortunately it's not. We have a commitment for 22 spaces from this particular landlord.
Well, as it was mentioned, people have gone in person and counted. So I'm just saying, you can go and count. I can go and count.
Our lease is for 22 spaces.
So what are they going to do? Pull out 3 more spaces somewhere that don't exist?
Well, all right. I'm not going to comment on the anecdotal evidence that you're providing.
Okay.
However, and I think our traffic engineer has testified to it, that we have more than adequate parking on our site to accommodate the Friday services. The Johnson Lane spaces are only for overflow parking.
I think it's kind of a clear testament to the fact that we know that parking is insufficient, but that's just my opinion. Just a quick question. I don't know if this is for the planning board. I don't know who would actually answer this question, but parking at that site, is that use permitted? Is there any kind of variance or anything required for that business to allow or to sublet their parking lot for this use?
Yeah, I mean, there are parking spaces in a parking lot. I don't think they need a variance to lease out their parking spaces.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Next. Anybody else want to speak? Go ahead. Ma'am?
Hi, Janet Cohen, 8 Brandeis in Parlin. My concern is parking as far as the firemen at the firehouse. Is there adequate spaces that they can respond to an emergency and park on Friday nights when everybody is parking at the firehouse and in the fields? I usually see them park in. Because when they're coming to a fire, they don't have time to be searching for an open spot. Are there places delegated where the people from the mosque are not parking and leaving them open for them at all times?
Ma'am, that's not really a question for this board because the purpose of this application would be for them no longer to be worshiping at the firehouse. I think I don't believe there's been any testimony from the applicant that if this application was approved, that there would be continued use of the parking lot at the firehouse. Is that correct, Mr. Sachs?
That's correct.
So the safety of the people in the Parlin section that the fire company is currently covering.
That would be a
Isn't-
question for the fire department, ma'am.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions, ma'am? Go ahead.
Carol Esposito, 6 Villanova Road. I just have 2 more questions. We keep talking about that there won't be any other activities going on during prayer services, which are about 15, 20 minutes. But will there be activities that are leading up to and directly after the prayer services?
Well, I think we've indicated on our chart the hours of those activities. And I don't believe the gym is open immediately afterwards. I think it opens up later on a Friday. So I don't think, I think it's in the report that's been
Okay, so
provided
that's
to
the
the board.
gym, but what about the classrooms?
Well, the classrooms,
the
again,
meeting
also,
rooms?
the classrooms also have limited days and limited hours. And I don't think they would be, no, they don't conflict with the Friday prayer services.
I don't mean just the Friday prayer services. I mean, any day of the week, prayer services. Are there activities that would be happening directly before the prayer services or directly after the prayer services?
Again, the limited attendance for the weekday prayer services, certainly the morning service, there's no activity going on. The afternoon service has got even less attendance. But
I'm not
again,
asking about attendance. Will there be activities prior to the prayer services, after the prayer services?
yes, there will be activities prior and they will be after. However, based upon the report that was submitted, the operations manual that was submitted, they would not be interfering with attendees leaving the site for Friday afternoon services.
Okay, so my last question is, where is the Sayreville Masala?
Sorry?
Sayreville Masala, maybe I'm saying it wrong, Musalla? Masala, am I saying that right?
Not familiar with that term.
Can you spell it? Like
Musalla.
Musalla.
Okay, where is that?
Yeah, it is part of the prayer area, a small section, usually like for example, the morning prayers. There are only 15 people or 20 people. So
So in-
instead of opening up the entire prayer area, a small section is opened up for those people to attend.
So in March, when you were inviting people to come at 3 a.m. on your Instagram, 3 a.m. to come pray at 3 a.m. Where were they going to?
First of all, I don't think there's any prayer occurring proposed here at 3 a.m. I mean, if I'm looking at the February 15th earliest prayer is at 6:15.
I'm just going by what's on Instagram.
I guess what's on Instagram is binding, but
It's from the Majid.
yeah, I don't know what
Instagram,
you're talking
so.
about, ma'am, but
Okay, when it's testimony, I'll bring the pictures of that. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else like to speak? Sir, come on up. Plenty of.
How you doing? Mark Poor, live in Madison Park. Mark Poor, Poore. I gotta say, I want you guys to build your mosque, I really do. But where you're putting it is really wrong. Middlesex County is a huge place, and you're building on the worst road. They've chosen it to be the worst road in this entire Middlesex County. You know how many roads are in Middlesex County? Come on. Anyway, my question to you is, why are you building on this site? Instead of going to Route 35 where all your constituents everybody can pull up without any hassle, no traffic, 50 meetings. Why? Is it a price of the lot? What was the reason? Now, why don't you go on Route 35, Route 9? There's plenty of room for you. And we wouldn't need all this aggravation. You've upset everybody from Sayreville to Old Bridge.
You have a question?
Yes, I do. Why are you choosing that lot? In that
Well,
spot?
I think we've answered this question before. First of all, we own the property. There had been a mosque operating there before. Certainly,
There was what there before?
there was a mosque operating there before.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes,
But not a 40,000 square foot huge monstrosity that doesn't belong there.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure I can really comment on
I'm just asking
characterization.
you, why did you, all right, you own the property. Okay, why didn't you maybe go to Route 9, Route 35, where so much more accessibility than Ernston Road? Are you kidding me? Build some houses there. You don't need a mosque there. Build a mosque on Route 35.
That's
All
not
these people are
this
upset.
isn't a question. You can't grandstand. Either you have to ask a
I
question.
asked a question, he doesn't answer it.
I have answered
They
it.
they own the property. They can seek relief to do what they want with it. Just because you don't like it doesn't make it
Well,
right.
it's not that we don't like it. Look how many families are upsetting over this. And believe me, I want you to build a mosque and you deserve to build a mosque, but let's be reasonable here. You know, this is crazy. Look what some people are gonna die on that road, crossing the streets, Bordentown Avenue. That's all I gotta say. I mean, think about it.
Anybody else have any questions? Anybody else have any questions? Make a motion to close the public portion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed? May 7th?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think that was a date we discussed. Yeah, May 7th is acceptable.
Don't leave, because I want you to all hear this. May 7th is going to be the next. If you have any questions or if you have any.
Any exhibits you'd like to bring in and have put on the record?
You can be sworn in and testify next time. You can come back up and just give your comments. But we'll start at 7:30 and we'll go to 11 again. Wait, come up. I can't hear you.
Is it gonna be just going over the parking, or is it going to be
Anything.
any other? Okay.
Anything.
Okay.
Anything that you have, if you have an exhibit that you want to place in, that you get sworn in, if you just have a comment, we'll just take your comment.
Okay.
And I'd like to thank the public on both sides of this issue. It's not an easy thing to do, but you've been very, very cooperative, and I'd like to thank you all for doing that.
Mr. Chairman, before you leave, I think I mentioned before, I reserve my right to have my planner testify at the next hearing, which would be very brief.
Okay.
But at that point, he
We have no
certainly is
problem with
subject to questioning, and then you could make whatever.
You
public
didn't close,
comment.
so we don't have any problem. We'll open up with him in the beginning.
Thank you.
All right, everybody knows we're on. We're not going to renotice.
So this will be May 7th at this location?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you very much for the cooperation. Thank you to the board.
Can I get a motion to close, to
Make
adjourn?
a motion to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank
Any
you.
opposed? The ayes have it.